struck out towards left center. Siani back. Gone. And it's a one-run game. The belly bomb is 11th for 3. Line drive, base hit, left field. Here comes Nico. He's in. Swanson racing for second, and he's in. And we're tied up at 4. The other way, slicing, fair ball. Here comes Dansby. Ball game. Cubs win. Mike Tuchman walks it off. That's a comeback for you.
That is the win of the year right there, Boo.
That's what it sounded like last night on the Marquee Sports Network up in Chicago. They were much happier, certainly, with that ending than we were here in St. Louis with Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. I think many of you, and I'm curious, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. I think many of you were more frustrated, more angered, more disappointed by that loss, it seems, than I was last night. It sucked, don't get me wrong. I didn't enjoy watching Ryan Helsley get hit around in the 9th inning. That is not something that I woke up yesterday hoping to see. But I felt like I left yesterday's game. I know this sounds strange because they lost, and the end result does matter, and they need to start racking up the wins here. I understand all of that. But I left the game feeling a little bit more confident about their long-term outlook than I did disappointed by what happened in that one game. And the reason why is because Sonny Gray was awesome last night. Jojo Romero showed you some stuff that we haven't seen from him in a while. Paul Goldschmidt continued to show you his ability to get big hits, especially against left-handed pitching. They went up against one of the better lefties in the league and did some pretty good damage against him. No, they didn't string together a ton of hits, but man, nobody has stringed together a ton of hits this year against Shota Imanaga. You got 10 hits against him last night and did some damage. All right, that'll play. And so the 9th inning sucked. It wasn't fun. And Ryan Helsley left a couple of sliders up, and they were sitting on his fastball pretty well, and you lose the game 5-4. It was the first time all year Ryan Helsley has entered a game in the 9th inning with a lead, and you went on to lose. So that's going to happen. It's not fun when it does, but it's going to happen to your team. I left last night strangely feeling a little bit more confident about this team than I did going in. T-Bone, what was your reaction to that one last night? Tough loss on the road in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I look at the Helsley issue last night, and that 9th inning was just a blip on the radar. Hey, he's the best closer in the game, in my opinion. He's going to have 1 or 2 blown saves that go like that. So I don't read too much into that. I don't think Ryan Helsley's suddenly broken and there's panic for the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm with you, though. Now, there were a lot of good signs last night. Paul Goldschmidt continues to look like Paul Goldschmidt of old. That's the kind of pitch that he homered on last night. 92-mile-an-hour fastball, low in the zone. That's the pitch he killed when he's right, and he's looking a lot better. JoJo finally showed some signs of life out of the bullpen in a decent high-leverage spot there, and Sonny Gray got back on track after a weird, 2nd inning where things kind of went awry on him, and he finishes with 9 strikeouts. But I will say, as much as I took away those positives, I do understand some of the frustrations from the Cardinals fan base, because you know what August isn't? It's not a month for small victories. We shouldn't be celebrating the 3 small victories if you're the Cardinals fan base, and I totally get that, because now is the time where you need to be winning. Now is the time where you need to be pushing and not celebrating, hey, look, Goldie's hit the ball for 10 games. So I understand that, but it felt like some of the things that you need to have go right, you mentioned it yesterday on the show, Sonny Gray's got to get back to pitching like the ace that he is for the Cardinals to get to October. He did that last night. Paul Goldschmidt, if he's heating up, it changes how I view this offense and how they're going to make this push for October. And I really think they need a lefty to finally figure things out in their bullpen and high leverage spots. So JoJo looking like himself a little bit last night, to me, all good enough signs for me to say, okay, I understand I shouldn't be taking the small victories out of it, but I'm going to have to in this one.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Helsley, because that's the story that people are focusing on, and it's understandable. He's the one that blew the game last night. Doesn't happen often. In fact, hasn't happened this year. As I mentioned, he has not yet, prior to last night, come into a game in the 9th inning with the lead and had the Cardinals go on to lose. Now, he had 2 blown saves prior to last night, but that was mostly extra inning stuff that happened there. Last night was the first time come into the 9th inning with a lead, chance to close this thing down, and then the Cardinals lose because of him. Man, and I've gotten a lot of criticism for this online. That's totally fair. People can have differing opinions. I thought his stuff looked okay for the most part last night. He had 100 miles an hour in his back pocket. The velo was there because he hasn't been used a ton lately, which I view as a positive, even though some are taking that as a negative over the last 24 hours. His slider, I thought, looked decent. He didn't have great command over it. And this is where maybe there's a little bit of a technicality here. I didn't think his command was great. I thought his stuff looked pretty good, though. He left a curveball up over the plate, and it goes a million miles with Cody Bellinger hitting that thing out. He leaves a slider a little bit too much into the heart of the plate, and that's one that Swanson was able to get to. I didn't mind the approach against Swanson. He goes, I think it's 5 straight breaking balls against him. This year, Dansby Swanson's been one of the worst hitters in Major League Baseball against the breaking ball specifically. He's got like a 215 batting average against it with a slugging percentage below 300. He got a double against you. Credit where it's due. He made you pay for a pitch that got a little too much of the plate. And then after that, the Cubs clearly have something on Ryan Helsley. This season, this comes from Derek Gould, the Cubs have 12 hits and 16 base runners in 5 2/3 innings against Ryan Helsley. 2 of the 3 home runs that he's allowed this year have been against the Cubs. He said after the game last night, I got to go back and watch something because clearly they're seeing something against me that I haven't noticed. And so I don't have a lot to take away in terms of like Ryan Helsley blinking alarm bells. I don't see that. I thought Ryan Helsley was mostly encouraging last night with the stuff, and the results didn't go his way.
Now, if you want one alarm bell for me for Ryan Helsley, and it's not from last night, it's from the season a little bit as a whole. I've seen on the text line already, well, you throw 100. Why are you throwing sliders? Because his fastball gets killed.
Yeah, his fastball hasn't been his best pitch this year. His slider's been his best pitch. 318
batting average against his four-seam fastball this year with a slugging percentage of .424. That's why he's not throwing the fastball this year. And I have no issue with the Cardinals basically telling Ryan Helsley, and Ryan Helsley saying, hey, you look at my numbers throughout my career, what's my best pitch? It's my slider. So I have no issue with him going to his best pitch more often, using it at basically 50% this season, and with him throwing it to Dansby Swanson because he struggles against the slider so much and breaking pitches as a whole.
Last night was the second extra base hit he's given up against his slider all season long. His second one. And against his curveball, it was the first extra base hit that he's given up all season long on a curveball. So he gave up 2 extra base hits last night against his breaking pitches. He had allowed 1 on the season prior to last night.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing here? Like, those are his best pitches. He used them. He got beat. Sometimes the other team beats you. And last night, I didn't feel like the Cardinals have given some games away this year, dude. The White Sox series, the Rockies series, like we have seen them throw the ball around and they lose the game because it was on them. Last night, the Cubs beat you. Fair and square, they went into the 9th inning and they put together some good at-bats against one of the best relievers in all of baseball. That's what happened last night.
Yeah, they beat you. And even like that fastball that Tauchman hit for the walk-off, that he was clearly late on that. He didn't hit that the other way on purpose. He just ended up beating you, getting ball to bat. But the one alarm for me is the Helsley fastball. But again, his slider and curveball has been so good that I'm not worried about his forcing having a 318 batting average against. I wonder if he's tipping. That's probably my best get against the Cubs. Yeah. Is they've picked up on something that he's tipping for some reason, somewhere, somehow. But I'm not overly alarmed because opponents have hit his fastball well all season long, and he's been one of the best closers in all of baseball, and that's why I have no issue with him throwing the slider and curveball more often.
I think Helsley has become somewhat of a lightning rod of discussion here in St. Louis because we go back to the deadline, right? And he was the guy that, hey, if the Cardinals are gonna sell, if you're somebody that does not believe in the 2024 Cardinals, I would say generally speaking, like a flow chart, if you don't believe in the Cardinals, then the Cardinals should trade Ryan Helsley. It wasn't so much a sell for the Cardinals. It was a sell on Ryan Helsley while his stock is up right now. And so that's one piece of the Ryan Helsley conversation. Another piece is this fastball debate, right? You throw 100, throw your fastball, Helsley. He can be frustrating at times because he allows more base runners than what you would expect. He's a closer, and in these moments, it's similar to what it was with Rosenthal at times, where you're like, man, you just can't make this thing easy, can you? You give up 2 base runners, it's a 2-run game, and then the winning run comes up to the plate. And generally speaking, Helsley gets out of those spots. Last night he didn't, and I think it's become somewhat of a lightning rod for discussion with Ryan Helsley, despite him on the season having a 2.7 ERA, which is really damn good. And on the season, being one of the best closers, not the best, but one of the better closers in all of baseball, having 33 saves so far this year, which ties his mark from the last 2 years combined. I don't view it that way. Ryan Helsley is healthy. Ryan Helsley is one of the MVPs on this team. Ryan Helsley, if this team makes it to the playoffs, will be one of the primary factors in them getting there in 2024. I think that dude is one of the most important pieces on the team, and he had a bad night. And the Cubs made him pay for a couple of pitches that he left up, and they seem to have something on his fastball, which is not something that most other teams across the sport have. So that's the way that I left the game last night. I didn't leave it as mad, angry, frustrated as many, and I understand if you are upset because that sucked. It was not fun to watch in the ninth inning. But overall, it was a well-played baseball game, super entertaining. The result just stunk for the Cardinals last night. So that's kind of how I viewed that one. With I almost did it. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. The YouTube chat off and running this morning, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. We're going to talk to Buster Olney coming up in about 15 minutes or so. One of the best insiders in the game. Want to get his thoughts on what the Cardinals were able to accomplish at this year's deadline and what he thinks about the Cardinals relative to the wild card in the National League right now. We'll talk to Buster about that coming up at 11:30. But next, we briefly mentioned Sonny Gray's night from last night. He was quietly the story of the night for the Cardinals in a positive way. We'll talk about him next year on 101 ESPN.
Now let's see if Sonny Gray, Jimmy, can right the ship after a rough July. Here's where you need your ace to pitch like one here in Chicago. Sonny Gray jumps ahead of him and just struck him out looking. Another 1-2 for Bellinger. He is caught on and missed. Sonny Gray has his 8th strikeout. He's on the ground. Back to the mound. Sonny's got it. Fast to second one. Win to first. A double play. Sonny Gray gets through 7 innings.
That's what it sounded like last night on Bally Sports Midwest. Sonny Gray, 7 strong innings for the Cardinals. He needed that one. 2-run ball. He retired 16 of the last 18 Cubs that he faced. First 2 innings got off to a rocky start. He didn't look like himself. Well, he did look like the previous version of himself from the last 5 starts. His July did not go well. But then he settled in. And from the 3rd inning on, that looked like the Sonny Gray that the Cardinals signed in the offseason. In his previous 28 innings, he had allowed 45 base runners, and he had a 6.7 ERA in those starts. Opposing hitters batting .330 against him. It wasn't good. And you remember in his last start, after the game, he came out and he's like, I need to change some stuff. I've got to get back to what my routine is. I've got to be more committed, and I'm committed to doing that. And it was kind of a strange post-game press conference, post-game media availability, but Sonny uses it almost as kind of like a therapy session sometimes, where he's almost speaking to himself as much as he's speaking to the media or to fans.
A couch for him?
Yeah, I feel like we should get him something, like a little chair for him to sit at.
That'd be good.
And last night he had something similar where he was asked about, was there a pitch that unlocked things for you? And here was Sonny Gray's response.
It's not a pitch. You just have to live it. You have to, for me at least, you just have to live it every day, practice it. It's a lot that goes into that. But I know that that's when I'm at my best, is when I do have an edge to me, when I take the ball with an edge.
He mentioned compete 20 different times in his 3-minute post-game press conference last night. And he talked about his routine, getting back to it, and having to live it every single day. Whatever happened between his starts, whatever led to that start yesterday, honestly, I don't even care. Just more of it. More of that. Because the single most encouraging thing that came out of last night's game was Sonny Gray looking like the guy that they need him to be. Sonny Gray pitching like a legitimate #1 starter. Not a great lineup for the Cubs. They've scuffled for most of the season. But holding that lineup to 2 runs in 7 innings, especially after what was a pretty rough first and second inning for Sonny, that was really encouraging to be able to see.
Yeah, those are the kind of outings you're going to need to see from Sonny down the stretch to help get this team to October, because when you get to this point in the season, the final 2 months, you need your ace to be the guy that's really carrying the pitching staff. Now that he does have kind of his Robin and Erick Fedde with him, he's more of a 3, and we've talked about that. So he's not the kind of guy that can really probably carry the load for Sonny Gray while he goes through his struggles. So it was good to see him get back and find that edge that he mentioned there in his post-game presser and get back to having his stuff. He had 15 swing and misses, and he was using most of his pitches very effectively. Curveball looked good. Sweeper was back to looking good. And like you said, against a lineup that's not very good in the Chicago Cubs, it was definitely an encouraging sign to see from Sonny Gray that, okay, whatever it was that happened in the previous, 5 starts in July where he really struggled, he's able to figure it out, right the ship, and now you just feel confident that he's going to go back on another one of those runs.
I know for whatever reason, Sonny Gray's late season splits have become like this talking point here in St. Louis. It was first that whenever he signed here in St. Louis, and then eventually it became that when you saw the July struggles for him.
I've heard he's not a winner.
Yeah, whatever the case, his August numbers have been amazing in his career. You go back to 2019. Since then, his ERA by year in the month of August, 0.75, 2.4, 2.9, 2.0, 2.0. That's what he's been over the last 6 full seasons. And then you saw what he did yesterday. The hope is this is what the rest of the year is going to look like.
Yeah.
And if it is, you got a #1 starter that can take you into October, and we'll see what it looks like once you get there when the pressure really starts to mount in the month of October. But he's consistently been an excellent pitcher at this time of the year. So fingers crossed that last night was the start of that for the Cardinals. The other guy that had a really nice outing for the Cardinals was Jojo Romero. He's clearly been working on stuff. When he entered that game in what was a blowout the other night, and it was like, whoa, hold on. Okay, so you've got Ryan Lutos, who's available to you, and you can just throw him for 2 innings here and get out of this thing.
He's going down the next day because you're activating Armstrong.
And you're going to JoJo instead. There's a reason for that. And the reason is he's been working on his changeup, man. He did not have a feel for that changeup for a month. And he seemingly has found something that's working for him with the changeup, and it's unlocking his fastball a bit, and all of his pitches start to tunnel and play off of one another now. And now you see the guy that he was yesterday. Gets through an inning, 2 strikeouts, 11 pitches in total. That's the JoJo Romero they need him to be. Because they didn't have another high-leverage, strikeout-heavy lefty arm that can get into those spots. Yesterday you saw that finally emerge for JoJo Romero. Maybe it was a one-off. Maybe that was just an outlier performance, and he goes back to being the guy that he was, where he doesn't have the feel for the changeup again. But if he can continue with what he was last night, that's a huge sign for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the Cardinals, they need him to get back on track because they really need a left-handed guy that can be the guy that wipes out left-handers when they're in the batter's box. Because when JoJo wasn't right, you had John King coming in those high-leverage situations. Matthew Liberatore, who I don't mind in those situations, but you can tell the Cardinals are a little anxious if they want to put him in that spot. I was afraid that they would not have a high-leverage left-handed arm they can go to down the stretch here unless JoJo can really figure things out. If he can, they've got a difference maker in that bullpen, and now I don't worry as much about left-handed batters. Oh, yeah! The lineup game? I don't get to play this because I'm behind the board, so I'm excited.
It is time for the lineup game here on BK and Ferrario. It is a day game today out in Chicago. I love a Friday day game at Wrigley. There's nothing better.
I do too now. I can actually watch it. Typically, it's behind me when I'm behind the board, too.
It'll be fantastic. So we got a first pitch coming up at 1:20, about 2 hours from now. We've got Buster Olney joining us here in just a little bit, so we're going to try to get through this thing as quickly as possible. Javier Assad, a guy that is, every time that I've ever seen him against the Cardinals, looks like the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. He does have some reverse splits. Righties slightly better against him than lefties are. He's got an 840 OPS against righties and a 640 OPS against lefties this year. Similar, not quite as significant splits last year, so it's not a one-off. T-Bone, batting leadoff today. I'll let you do the honors.
I believe it is Mason Wynn.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what.
Batting second today, I'm going to go with the guy that they have had there for most of the season at this point, and I'll go Alec Burleson.
Some lefty on lefty magic from a guy like Nolan Gorman who's hitting near you in the lineup.
What?
I still love that quote. Wilson Contreras batting third?
That would be my guess, yeah.
This one goes out to all the big willies.
Wilson, are you naked?
No, Tim, I'm wearing a hat.
Batting cleanup today. This is where things get a little wonky sometimes.
You said reverse splits. My guess is probably Goldie, been playing well.
Yeah.
The reverse splits make me think, I don't know if you have a lefty that can hit cleanup right now, so I would say show us Paul Goldschmidt.
Gold!
Okay, I like it.
With gold. Gold!
And then should we just stick with what they've been doing? Goldie Arenado, they can't be moved apart from one another.
Yeah.
Put him bat him fifth.
Yes. Show us Nolan Arenado.
Nolan is a security guard at the
I'm still upset about him
lumberyard.
hitting 5, but it's whatever.
Batting sixth, he's been better lately. He's a singles hitter now, but he's been better lately.
They go Pham. Pham's been on fire since he's got here.
I don't know that they're going to do it. I would say Lars Nootbaar here.
Okay, I'll trust
Put a lefty in there, break up the right-handed batters. You got 3 in a row, Wilson, Goldie, Arenado. Let's go Lars Nootbaar batting sixth.
1, 2, 3, 4. I'm grinding. I'm grinding.
Okay.
Now batting seventh. This one I could see being Tommy Pham.
Yeah.
Either Pham or Donovan, probably.
I say we go Tommy Pham. Let's talk about the family.
You don't turn your back on family.
He's officially an everyday player. It took literally 2 days.
Hey, man, he's been awesome in his 2 days, so I'm in. All right, so my question is Burley...
It could be Gorman. They haven't had him in there in a while. Get him a little bit of reps. Donovan, tough night last night for him offensively.
He's been struggling.
Let's go Gorman here.
Yeah, I like it. Show us Nolan Gorman.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. Let's see Brendan Donovan.
Donnie was a good bowler and a good man.
Gorman's officially benched out. And you want to do the honors for batting ninth?
Is it everybody's favorite, Michael Sinise? Show us Michael Ciani.
Michael.
That was pretty good.
Michael.
That was pretty well done by
Michael
us.
Phelps. You're Michael Cera.
Man, I'm a little disappointed that we flipped Newton Pham, because you're probably right. He does like to break up his right-handed heavy bats.
I don't mind it. You want to run this for us, Grant?
Yep, let's do it. So we got Mason Wynn batting leadoff at shortstop. Alec Burleson is the DH today. Wilson Contreras is the catcher. Paul Goldschmidt at first. Nolan Arenado at third. Lars Nootbaar in right, Tommy Pham in left, Brendan Donovan at second, and batting ninth in center field, Michael Ciani.
I feel terrible now. Apparently, according to the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The balloon party already did this, so I apologize.
Yep, we were show prepping at the time.
Yep,
so.
didn't know that. That's on me. I'll be better. We will be better in the future. We'll make up for it by letting you guys hear from Buster Olney. He joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Tough one for the Cardinals last night. They led 4-2 going into the ninth inning, but 3 earned runs by Ryan Helsley ended up in a blown save as the Cardinals fell in the first game of the series against the Cubs 5-4. Tonight, the Cardinals will look to bounce back, or today rather, as it's a 1:20 first pitch from Wrigley Field. Game 2 of the series will be Erick Fedde getting the start for the Cardinals and Javier Assad for the Cubs. I'm Grant Francis. The Sports Center update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
my favorite people to talk to in the baseball world is Buster Olney. He's ESPN's MLB insider. You can see him on Sunday Night Baseball. Cardinals Cubs Sunday night this week, 6 o'clock Sunday on ESPN. Buster Olney joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. Buster, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have you as always. So, Buster, let's start out kind of big picture with the Cardinals coming off of this year's trade deadline. What'd you make of their moves? They ended up adding the three things that they said they wanted, which was a starter, a reliever, specifically right-handed, and a right-handed bat. What'd you think of the moves that they ended up making?
They were fine, and they were in keeping really with what happened, generally speaking, at the trade deadline with all teams. I'm sure you probably have seen this note that among Baseball America's top 100 prospects, not a single one moved before the trade deadline. So all the teams, it felt like, were looking for ways, and what was a seller's market, and I had general managers complaining to me of contenders, complaining to me that there weren't a lot of players available. All these teams wanted to do things that helped make them get better, and there were really no haymakers. No huge moves that you were going to look back, I think, and say that they were massive difference-making moves. But they did address, some holes. And to get Tommy Pham, I think that I was actually surprised that there wasn't more action on Tommy Pham because of how well he finished with the Diamondbacks last year. He's a proven, guy who's not afraid, clearly, of the spotlight, and he can still hit. I thought that the White Sox would make a separate deal involving him and he'd have some value, but that's not where it was. So I thought the Cardinals did okay.
And Buster, how do you think they stack up now in the National League based on their moves?
Right, flat in the middle. Right, I was looking at some numbers before I came on to talk to you guys, and this kind of says it all. Out of 30 teams in baseball in runs scored, they're 22nd. Out of 30 teams in baseball, in earned run average, they're 18th. In defensive run saves, they're 11th. They're 16th in outs above average. So all of the metrics say they're flat out in the middle of the pack. And that's not necessarily something you go, yeah, well, that means that they're doomed and they can't make a dent in October if they get there. We saw last year with the Diamondbacks, they win 84 games and they wind up in the World Series. The Rangers. But, let's face it, they're probably going to need some guys to step up down the stretch. The one thing I was going to mention to you, to be in this position where they're right on the fringe of the wild card race, I wrote a piece about this the day after the trade deadline. Baseball changed its rules in 2019 where they wanted to sort of end the waiver trades that had taken place. But last year, the Angels, they created a loophole that a lot of other teams will use and see this year, and the Cardinals might be one of those teams that benefit from it. If you guys remember, the Angels tried to win after they made the decision last year to not trade Shohei Ohtani. They added a bunch of guys like Lucas Giolito, and they proceeded to completely fall apart. And then at the end of August, their owner, Artie Moreno, was kind of like the 10-year-old at the board game, and he flipped it. And the Angels put a bunch of guys out on waivers, from Giolito to Hunter Renfroe and other players. And he just dumped them out on the waiver wire trying to save a little bit of money in a practice that has been banned in every fantasy football league in America. But in Major League Baseball, you can do that. It made people queasy when it happened, but they didn't do anything to change that. And so in speaking with the executives, they think that you might see that sort of practice again at the end of this month where, let's say the Cubs completely fall out of the race and they want to save a little money and, Hector Neris, a good reliever, maybe they throw him out on the waiver wire. And the advantageous position to be in that situation, of course, because the waiver claims go from worst team to best teams, is to be kind of in the middle where the Cardinals are. You potentially could serve as a gatekeeper, as the Guardians and the Reds did last year, and just pluck up help, by claiming guys rather than letting them get to teams like the Mets and the Braves and some of the other teams in the wild card race. So at the end of the month, it might actually, work in the Cardinals' favor to be where they are in the standings if they stay there.
That wouldn't be allowed if Tommy Pham was in charge of this league. I'll tell you that much. He would have put a nix on that immediately. Buster Olney's our guest here on
Tommy Pham is going to be wearing a microphone for us on Sunday Night Baseball this week when the Cubs and Cardinals play.
Fantastic. That's the perfect choice. I can't wait to be able to hear that. Buster Olney's our guest here on 101 ESPN. You'll see him as a part of Sunday Night Baseball, Cardinals versus Cubs on Sunday Night Baseball once again this Sunday. Buster, one potential roadblock for the Cardinals to do what you're talking about is taking on money. And there was some reporting locally from Katie Wu and John Denton that the RSN deals and really just payroll in general, Cardinals ownership is not particularly inclined to add payroll this year or beyond. And my assumption is that's due to the RSN uncertainty long term. What have you heard on that, whether it's locally here with the Cardinals or just kind of big picture wise? How much is that playing into some of these teams and what they decided to do at this year's deadline?
I think it's a huge factor, and I don't have specific information about the Cardinals, but just in talking as we get close to the trade deadline, you'd ask people, hey, what are the Minnesota Twins going to do? Well, they're not going to do anything because they're restricted by their bad TV situation, and that's exactly what happened. The Twins did nothing. The Seattle Mariners, another team reportedly affected by this. Just talking with executives of other teams. So what do you hear about the Mariners? Are they going to make a big deal because they need offense? And the answer was no. They're really kind of pinned down by the fact they don't have money to spend. If the Cardinals are in the same position, I think you're exactly right. It would be an open question whether or not if that opportunity comes up at the end of the month to pick up waiver dumps, whether the Cardinals would do it. From a competitive standpoint, I got to believe that they would at least have to seriously take a look at it the way that the Guardians and the Reds did last year. You can't I think in that position, if they were right on the fringe of the playoff race, it'd be really hard for them to just let good players go to other teams.
Buster, when you talk to rival evaluators about Arenado and Goldie and players like this that are future Hall of Famers, and for whatever reason, it just feels like it goes right off of a cliff and the power is seemingly gone for them. Goldie's really picked it up lately. The last week or two, it's been much better for him offensively. But what do you hear about guys when it goes this quickly? Is there a commonality between them? What are you hearing on that?
It's interesting because I've gotten to know, especially Goldie. I remember the first time I met him was when he was playing in Double-A. And as you guys know, incredibly bright guy, incredibly disciplined guy. A couple of years ago was the first time that I noticed that he was having a hard time catching up to fastballs. It's interesting because this year his numbers against fastballs are actually pretty good. They're better than with off speed, but that also makes sense because what he might be doing, and I haven't asked him about this. I'm going to see him tomorrow. What happens with older players is, in my experience, is that they in anticipating their potential issue against fastballs, they are aggressive against that pitch. They look for that pitch. They anticipated that pitch, but they also become vulnerable against breaking balls. His numbers against breaking balls this year are really bad. And Father Time is undefeated. It's something that all aging players have to deal with. Their bat speed going down, especially in this era when pitchers are throwing harder than ever. If you're a 37, 38-year-old slugger, you have to commit probably earlier than you did a decade before. And the thing that jumps out to me about Nolan, and I mean, you just love his passion, but he tends to, no doubt, go through, and I suspect he'd be the first one to say this, when he gets down on himself, he goes really deep. And you could almost feel, at times his frustration. I was worried at the beginning of the year when I got off to a bad start that he'd be able to dig himself out at all. So it's been encouraging to me that he's been able to do that. And I still think, both those guys are capable because they have so much experience and they're both really bright guys. I think they have the ability to make the adjustments and to step out and to, be productive players. But that obviously, I think I remember talking to you at the beginning of the year saying, in some respects, when we look at the Cardinals, they're going to go where Paul Goldschmidt and Arenado go. They've had a mediocre offense to date, and that's partly because the two highest paid guys in their lineup have not produced well.
There's been some legitimate signs of life in Goldie's bat, which has been encouraging over the last couple of weeks. But Arenado's hitting singles. He's getting a lot of singles, Buster, but the power is just not there. It's been really frustrating to watch. The one other guy that I wanted to... Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, and as hitters, aging hitters make adjustments, they might be able to, it helps them with the one thing, but then it potentially opens up other vulnerabilities. That's the first thing that popped into mind when you mentioned that.
The one other guy that I did want to ask you about is we've had so much fun watching Mason win this year. He's one of the better young shortstops in the game. And if you just go by like wins above replacement, right? He's already at 3.5 on the season. He's on pace for nearly 6 this year. He's not going to win NL Rookie of the Year. That's going to go to Paul Skeens. But when you talk to people around the league, Buster, what do they say about the Cardinals' young shortstop?
That they might have their shortstop for the next 10 years, because he's such a collection of great skills. I'm sure you guys have heard the same stories that I have from the Cardinals that, he began his time within the major leagues. He had this instinct of watch me drive this one out of here. And, and he's had, everyone from Lance Lynn to Ollie Marmol basically say, we don't need you to do that. We need you to get on base and to focus on that. And it does feel like, that during the course of the year, his at-bats have gotten better and better and better as he, perhaps changes his perspective about what he's going to do. There's always a desire, I think, with someone who throws that well to show off his arm. And he's got to learn, how to best use that. But, man, he is an exciting player. And when you think about the defense that he and Siani bring up the middle, it's exceptional. And, as they go forward, guys like Goldschmidt and Arenado graduate, these are going to be 2 building blocks, I think, for a long time for this team.
Buster, we'll get you out of here on this. Your AL MVP as of today is who?
It would be Aaron Judge for me, and I would run and hide in a cave, and because it's too dang hard. Bobby Witt Jr. To me, it's a coin flip right now. And when I say that I would pick Judge, I think he's going to win. I don't know if I would actually vote that way because Bobby Witt Jr. is a shortstop, and that should be an advantage for him. And not only is he a shortstop, but he's a great shortstop. But I just wonder if the guy who hits more home runs will have an advantage. The one thing is I always think that, when you get into the awards voting, you get more attention if you play with the Yankees, but you're also surrounded by a lot of other stars, and you might get demerits from the voters. Aaron Judge, voters might look at it and say, hey, you got Juan Soto next year. Bobby Witt Jr. is basically anchoring this whole, Royals team, and he's going nuts, and he looks like this generation's version of George Brett, who can play shortstop and run.
It's unbelievable. 20 homers and 20 stolen bases each of his first 3 seasons of his career. Nobody's ever done that. It's absurd, some of the numbers that he's putting up.
We had him in the home run derby, and this is one of the cool things that stuck out, is that there's such a joy to what he does. So we go to the championship round, and Bobby Witt Jr. is in that against Teoscar Hernandez. And Michael Buffer, the ring announcer, comes out to announce the finalists. And I'm standing 20 feet away from Bobby Witt Jr., and as Michael Buffer starts out, hey, from Kansas City, and I'm not going to try to do the rest of the imitation, but he's doing that, and Bobby Witt Jr. gets the biggest grin on his face, and he looks toward the stands where his mom and his dad are, and he does this thing with his thumb like, hey, look at this. I'm in the home run derby, and Michael Buffer's announcing my name. It was so much fun to watch.
And he's one of the best players in all of Major League Baseball. You love to see it. Hey, Buster, we appreciate the time as always, man. We'll be looking forward to hearing you on the call on Sunday for the Cardinals versus the Cubs. Looking forward to seeing what you guys put together with Tommy Pham during that mic'd up segment. That's going to be fantastic television.
Pretty classic. Can you imagine the writing questions from fans for that? Oh, that'll be fun.
I've got some thoughts. I'll be curious to see what they come up with, Buster. All the best, man.
See you guys.
You got it. That's Buster Olney. Appreciate his time as always. ESPN's Major League Baseball Insider. You can follow him on Twitter at Buster_ESPN. What he said there about the waiver claims is going to be fascinating to watch, man. If that is something that actually happens this year, and a team, trying to think of who would maybe be most likely to do this, but Like if the Rangers, for example, were to fall out of it completely, or like you said, the Cubs, who are basically out of it at this point, maybe the Giants would be one of these kinds of teams. Somebody that ends up falling out of it after thinking they were in it at this year's deadline. If they decide to put guys through waivers, and it's a reliever who could really help the Cardinals, $6 to $8 million, something like that. So for the rest of the season, you're only paying $1 to $2 million. I will be very curious to see if that is something that the Cardinals consider, because John Mozeliak, on the record, when I asked him, were financial obligations, financial limitations a part of what led you to what you did at the deadline? He said, my hands were not tied. There were no financial restrictions. Okay, this would be an opportunity for them to prove that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that happens, if the Cardinals will, because they cannot move salary out. You know, he said they brought on, what was it, like $1 million in payroll?
$1.5 million.
Yeah, so they added some payroll, but they also shipped out a bunch. Like, they shipped out $10 million in Tommy Edman. They were hoping they could ship out $6 million in Giovanni Gallegos. They're not going to be able to do that when it comes to August, and that's where it's going to get interesting. I don't know if there's a team that is actually going to end up doing significant pieces out there this year, because last year was kind of the one-off where Artie Moreno really did not want to get up to that luxury tax threshold with the Angels, but he also knew this was his last chance to win with Ohtani, and then when they were out of it, he just dumped everything and ended up getting underneath it. The only team that might do that is San Francisco, who you said, because they're kind of close to the luxury tax threshold as well, but outside of them, I just don't know if there's going to be significant pieces that will end up being put on waivers that may even draw interest from the Cardinals.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That's Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. If you guys missed any of our conversation with Buster Olney, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything Sports or otherwise here on 101 ESPN.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers.
Presented by Window World St. Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, go ahead and get them in now on the text line or in the YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. All right, let's start out with this from the 314. Guys, congratulations to Ferrario on a new addition to the family. If you guys missed it yesterday, Alex Ferrario and his wife welcomed in a beautiful baby girl the other night. So that is why Alex is out today. He will be back in, I believe, late next week.
My understanding, out all next week, and we'll be back the following week.
Back in the next week, as I was saying. What is your favorite childhood story? Mine would be The Hungry Caterpillar. We have been doing a lot of books with Luca, as you could probably imagine, but it's more of like you get a line in on each page and then he turns the page for you. The Pout Pout Fish is number one on the leaderboard right now for us. Pout Pout Fish is very good. It is a bit problematic, but a good book nonetheless. If you want to look into why it's problematic, you can look into the book. There was some kissing that took place between the two fishes. She didn't ask for permission. And it said there's a disclaimer at the end of the book that says, in this particular world, that is seen as a sign of appreciation for one another. So yeah, Pout Pout Fish is the number one on the leaderboard.
Wow, very complicated.
It is. There's a lot going on, man. It's a children's book.
I'm trying to think what would be one. I used to read a lot, especially like when I'm thinking child's book, I'm thinking like kindergarten range, first grade.
Like Captain Underpants, that kind of thing?
Captain Underpants was a big one.
Sure.
The Bernstein Bears was another one that I read a lot of. Those were the first ones that kind of came into my mind when you said that. But I don't know. I'm so I'm not in that kid zone.
I'm not surprised by that.
You asked that question, I'm here in my mind going, oh crap, I have no idea.
There's one other one that I thought of that I remember reading a lot when I was a kid was Goodnight Moon.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure
we got that on the text line as well. That's a good one.
That was one. And Hungry Caterpillar was the other one that I remember pretty well.
I used to read to my sister when she was really little, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, I think was what it was called.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
All right, BK, with today being Friday and lots of people doing fish fries, do you think that people that put ketchup or tartar sauce on their fish are complete psychopaths? Tartar sauce, not at all. Tartar sauce, fine. Ketchup on your fish, that reaches that level for me. Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
I haven't either. I didn't know that was a thing.
I'm sure Mahomes does that, but otherwise I can't imagine there's anybody else in the world that would do that.
He is a psychopath then. Tartar sauce, I don't like tartar sauce, but if you're putting that on your fish, I get it because that's a big thing. I've never heard of ketchup on fish.
Same.
That's news to me.
Grant probably doesn't eat fish.
Yeah, no, I eat fish. I don't do condiments. So any
at all?
No.
Hot sauce?
No.
Mustard?
No.
Really?
You want to keep going?
I feel like I know based upon what we've talked about so far that it's just a no.
Yeah, no, I pretty much no. Absolutely, actually, barbecue makes me nauseous. Even the smell of it just makes me
interesting.
Ugh. Yeah, no, I don't do condiments. I do seasoning. I season my food, but I don't usually put any sauce or anything like that.
I don't put anything on my fish at all. I'll season it really well. I put seasoning on it, but I won't put a sauce. I'm not a tartar sauce guy. I won't do lemon. I'm not a big lemon guy. I don't like sour stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Even though I'm a sour person, I do not like sour stuff.
I typically don't like anything that has lemon on it either. Even lemon desserts.
Yeah.
Oh, that I could see.
Yeah.
I like lemon desserts. Lemon. I like lemon in general, so I'm lemon in my water, lemon on my fish, just a lemon. I'm good. From the 314, guys, have you been watching the Olympics at all? And if so, what are your favorite events to watch? For me, it's the gymnastics, the rowing, and the archery. I'm all in on swimming and sprinting. Those are the two things from the Summer Olympics that are right at the top of my list. And then basketball, of course, that plays to my liking in general. So those would probably be my top three.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like every time the Olympics come around, I'm I'm going to get more invested in it. And I just haven't really gotten to the point where I'm okay, I'm going to turn on the Olympics. I have watched some basketball just because I think the competition in that is now it's still in favor of the U.S., but it is much more competitive now than it was even like 4 years ago, 8 years ago, where it was, okay, look, the U.S. is going to win gold, and like the one game that might be competitive is the gold medal match. Now it feels a little bit more like, okay, I'm on the edge of my seat thinking, okay, they might be able to lose to Serbia. They almost lost to South Sudan in exhibition. I think they beat them the other day, if I remember correctly.
Big.
Yeah, but I think it's a much better competition now than what it was, and that's probably the only one that I've really paid close attention to.
I'll tell you what, I've caught it a couple times on TV. One sport that I've found really entertaining to watch is rugby.
Sure.
I don't know like any of the rules, but it is fun to watch.
I don't really know anything.
Each other.
I don't know anything about it either, but just watching it is so. Like the thing that I admire the most is like how much contact there is, no pads, and there's like hardly ever any injuries. Meanwhile, you watch soccer.
That's why people teach the rugby style tackling.
Yeah.
Because if it works in that without any equipment on, like it works in the NFL. That's why they started going that direction. Like Seahawks, I think, were one of the first teams to really start going in that direction. All right, from the 314, guys, do you think that last night was a blip on the radar or the start of the end for the Cardinals?
Wow.
I think it was a blip on the radar, and the reason why is because I think that essentially the reason you lost that game was because Ryan Helsley had a bad night. And I don't expect Ryan Helsley to have a bunch of bad nights. If you do, then yeah, it was the beginning of the end. But most of that game was really well played by the Cardinals. I thought it was a super entertaining game. It was a fun one to watch from both sides, honestly. You went up against a very good pitcher and put up some runs across the board, got a bunch of hits against him, and you got beat because your closer had a bad night. So I view it as a blip because I don't view this as the beginning of the end for Ryan Helsley.
Yeah, I don't think it's the beginning of the end. I think Helsley by himself was the blip on the radar. The Cardinals, like this is kind of who they are. They're like a 4 games above 500 team. I don't think they're going to really separate much from that. And I think they're like an 86 win team when you look at them. So being the beginning of the end, no. The blip on the radar is Ryan Helsley. I probably fall a little bit in between on what that question was asking.
Yeah, like last year you saw like the bullpen just implode basically all season long. You saw how a bad bullpen affects a team last season. This season, I think I saw from Katie Wu earlier today, the Cardinals led 48 times going into last night, going into the 9th inning, and we're 48-0. So if you're telling me you're 48-1, 49 games into, being up going into the 9th, I'll take that.
All right, last thing here from the 314. Who would be your picks for manager of the year at this point? The texter says, vote feels like a no-brainer for the American League, but where would you go on these? Agreed on the American League side of things. On the National League side, I think it's got to be Murphy from Milwaukee. Everybody counted them out coming into the season, thought, hey, 3rd or 4th best team in the National League Central, and right now they have the 3rd best record in the National League. So for me, Milwaukee, what they've done, if they continue doing this and they end up winning this division, Murphy should be the National League Manager of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they win the division, it'll be Murphy. My top 3, because I think both are kind of runaways at this point. Murphy and probably Vogt from Cleveland. In the NL, I think Schilt's going to be top 3.
Sure.
Especially if they make the playoffs, I think he's going to end up being
how the
second or third.
offense started out to keep things stabilized.
And they've dealt with injuries in the starting rotation. Like Darvish hasn't pitched in like a month. Musgrove hasn't pitched in a month. And then I think the other one, it's going to come down to either Derek Shelton with the Pittsburgh Pirates, or I'm drawing a blank on his name in New York. Mendoza? Yep. Is that his name? Mendoza? So I think one of those two guys will end up being 3rd in that race for the manager of the year.
What about like Guardians? Considering their payroll is so okay.
He
I wasn't
right
familiar
now would
with.
be the pretty clear number 1 in the American League, in my opinion.
Just considering how little they spend and how great that team is, like you gotta at least have him
I
up
think
there.
Hugh from the Royals would probably be 2 on that list. Like I think you can make a case the top 3 managers in the American League in this voting would be Cleveland, KC, Minnesota.
I wonder about Joe, what's his name, with Houston. I almost had Espada. Because remember, we wrote them off at the beginning of the year. They were playing like the Cardinals, where they were blowing games with their bullpen. Their rotation wasn't performing well. Their offense wasn't hitting. And we said, oh, that's what the 2023 Cardinals were like. And now you look, and the Astros are tied for 1st in the American League West, which is unbelievable. I wonder if he'll be a guy that will sneak into the top 3.
That's Tanner. He is Grant. I'm Brandon. Kylie, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, it'll be our Fantasy Football Friday segment. Each and every Friday throughout the next few weeks as we get closer and closer to the regular regular season for the NFL. We're going to do a Fantasy Football Friday segment. If you guys have some fantasy questions, big picture-wise, not like, hey, who should I keep on my team? That's too specific. But if you got big picture questions, fantasy football-wise, get them in on the Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646, and we'll get to those coming up at 12:15. But next, Paul Goldschmidt showing signs of life. Are you believing it? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. So Paul Goldschmidt is showing some signs of life. I don't know how much to believe it, but I'm starting to fall for it again, T-Bone. I'm weak. I feel like I'm starting to believe what we're seeing, and I don't know if I'm going to be hurt, but I feel like I'm ready to be hurt again.
I can't tell you how bad I want to scream Goldie's back, but I learned my lesson from last year with Jack.
In his last 19 games, it's not a super small sample size anymore. This is the longest stretch of quality play that we've seen from Goldie this season. Now, if you're not in on this, I get it, guys. I'm not telling you should be. I'm scared of myself that I'm potentially buying into this. In his last 19 games, he's batting .290. Now, he has 2 walks in the last 19 games, so his batter's eye, not what it was. He's super aggressive right now. Like, he's free swinging like crazy. .580 slugging percentage. It's good for an OPS nearing 900. In the last 19 games, he has 4 doubles and 6 home runs. So the power is starting to show back up. I have not looked at his updated on-pace numbers in a while, but I bet you it's pretty close. Yeah, he's on pace now for 25 home runs this year. If you had told me that 2 weeks ago, I'd have been like, nope, not happening. He's not getting there this year. He's on pace now for 25 doubles and 25 home runs, which is, I mean, not prime Goldie numbers, but it's closer to what you saw like last year from Paul Goldschmidt offensively. T-Bone, are you believing it? Are you buying what we're seeing right now from Paul Goldschmidt?
I think I am, because he's now starting to do damage against fastballs again, and he's starting to hit those better, and he's taking advantage of mistakes. Like last night, Shohei Managa, the home run he hit to left field. That's a fastball that was a mistake. Caught too much of the zone, and what's Paul Goldschmidt do? He punished it, and he didn't do that early on. Early on in the season, it almost looked like he was kind of second-guessing himself or guessing up there at the plate, and you just saw that he wasn't hitting for any power. He really was chasing. His strikeout rate down as to what you kind of would want it to be with Paul Goldschmidt.
It's like 25%, which is kind of what he's been over the last few seasons.
And that's fine. And he's now hitting for power, and I understand he's not taking the walk, so his on-base is a little bit down. But you know what? If Paul Goldschmidt can give me an 800 OPS by hitting for power and hitting decent average and just not really having that on-base percentage, I'm okay with that, because
he's basically providing you what Gorman was supposed to provide you.
Exactly.
But without as many strikeouts.
And you know what Gorman was? What we thought coming into the season was a complementary piece. And Paul Goldschmidt, at this point in his career, is best suited to be a complementary piece. And if he is going to be able to perform like this, okay, now you've got a guy that can hit cleanup like he is today, or hit fifth in your lineup if somebody else gets super hot that could slide up ahead of him. I'm okay with this, because he doesn't have to be the guy that shoulders the load anymore. That's now on Wilson Contreras, Alec Burleson, and Mason Wynn at the very top of the lineup. I think I'm in what I've been seeing from Paul Goldschmidt.
They still need somebody to be that power presence in the middle of their order. They need somebody to emerge as that. And whether that's going to be Nolan Gorman or Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado or Wilson Contreras, like whoever that is, they need somebody else to emerge as one of those guys that when they come to the plate, damage is expected. Not hoped for, expected. And if this is what he's going to be, he's just going to sell out for power. And in the second half of the season, he's still got the average, but he's not going to walk as much. And then he's going to get the power for you. They have enough guys in this lineup right now that will take their walks, that you can make up that on-base percentage elsewhere. What you can't make up is the slug, because you just don't have pure sluggers in this lineup. Burleson has been a really good hitter, and he's coming with the slug. Wilson Contreras, really good hitter. He's giving you some of the slug. You need 3 or 4 guys that can provide that for you on any given night, no matter who the pitcher is. And if Paul Goldschmidt can be that for them again, man, it really does open up a lot of what you can expect from this offense. Somebody on the text line brought up a question that I started to think about last night from the 573. Guys, my fear is that Goldie is going to play just well enough over the final 2 months of the season to get himself another contract from the St. Louis Cardinals.
Ooh.
T-Bone, if this is the guy that he is the rest of the year, if he finishes, let's say, from July 8th on, which is the stretch of games that we're talking about here, and he has a 850 OPS, somewhere around there, so like 20% above league average offensively for July 8th to the end of the year, are you considering it? No. Would you consider bringing Goldie back next year, or is this the end no matter what?
I think this is the end no matter what, because now that he is getting older, you're seeing it takes him a lot longer to get out of slumps. You know, now if he gets hot for the rest of the season, I can't just ignore what happened early on, because I think that's a sign of, hey man, that's him showing his age. We talk about older players, it can go for him with the snap of a finger, but it also takes him longer to get out of slumps. So I would say no matter what. You shake Paul Goldschmidt's hand. Hey, you've been great for this organization. You won an MVP, and we didn't end up living up to expectations with you. That's on us as a front office. But no, you've got his replacement internally. You move Alec Burleson to first base, and now you kind of free up some of the logjam with your position players as well by being able to do that. Now Donovan can either go back into the outfield with Nootbaar and Ciani, or if Walker takes that job, you've got him going into right field, Nootbaar in left. Just having Goldschmidt walk at the end of the season, you've got the internal replacement in Alec Burleson, which he's probably better suited at first base than the outfield, if we're being honest. And now you kind of clear up a little bit of the logjam with some of your position players.
I'm not doing it, man. I'm not bringing him back. There's just too many questions. There's too much risk. And if this team's going to be cash-strapped the way that we think that they are,
yeah,
Goldie's not coming back for like a $5 million deal.
He's not coming back to be a bench bat either.
For guys at his age, for guys that are his level of accomplishment. Like, remember the quote from Tommy Pham the other day where he said, hey, listen, I don't feel like I'm a platoon bat at this point in my career. I feel like I can still be an everyday player. And I look at the numbers, and like there's only one outfield that has 3 starters that are better than me, and that is not here. That is in San Diego. The reason why I loved that quote is because it's honest. It's an honest reflection of Tommy Pham's mindset. And there are very few players that will be honest with you when asked a question like that. And Paul Goldschmidt is going to say all of the right things because he's a pro. And one of the things that he's going to do is he's never going to say something like that will potentially like put himself in a bad spot. But Goldschmidt wants his respect. Like, part of why he ended up here is because he wasn't going to get the money from Arizona that he was worth. And St. Louis was willing to give him that money. And money in baseball is respect. Similar to that Wainwright final contract, where $17.5 million for a guy that I'm not sure at that point was necessarily quote-unquote worth $17.5 million. It was about respect for him. And he had given them a bit of a discount on his previous one because he wasn't good the year prior, honestly. And so this one was kind of a makeup contract. For Goldie, if he's going to come back, I would have to imagine it's going to be $15+ million next year. I don't think you're getting less than that for him. And I'm not doing that for a guy that I can't go into next season expecting to have a 750+ OPS. He might, but there's just too much risk. And you look at the way that they have now been able to develop a guy like Alec Burleson, that is my everyday first baseman next year. That should be the expectation going into the season. And there may be some ups and downs because he's a super aggressive hitter, and sometimes you're just going to have to live with the batted ball data when it comes to that. But I would rather live with that than go into next season with the bigger question mark, which is age, decline, and Paul Goldschmidt being my everyday first baseman. I can't have that in the lineup next year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm with you. Everything that you said makes sense to where you've got the replacement internally, and there's just too many questions. And it's not like this is just the first season in which it's happened. Last year was a down year for Paul Goldschmidt. 268 batting average. The power diminished. I think 447, if I'm not mistaken, was his lowest since like his rookie year. So like you've seen the signs that show like the decline is real.
And it started the second half of last year. Basically since July of last year, like he just has not been the same guy.
Even going back to his MVP season, you saw like he struggled to maintain.
September of that year, remember? He fell off a cliff.
I thought he was going to lose himself the MVP in that with the month of September. So you're seeing like he's having a tougher time being able to put together a full 162. Look, he's going to probably get a contract from somebody in Major League Baseball to be their first baseman. It just can't be here in St. Louis.
Yeah, a team like the Astros make all the sense in the world. He's going back to Texas.
Somebody that loses their first baseman like Milwaukee.
Sure.
Could lose Hoskins this season. Pete Alonso if he leaves, Christian Walker if he leaves. There's a spot for him in the league.
I think like one thing that Goldie seems to value is the location that he's going to, and I'm not sure New York is necessarily like Paul Goldschmidt's first choice of places to live. The reason I brought up Houston is because he's from Texas. He can go back to at least his home state, even if not necessarily like his hometown, and play first base for them for a year, play on a legitimate contender, and see where things go from there. That to me makes a lot of sense. You just look at the way that this roster sets up. I saw somebody say on the text line, guys, just Walker can become your everyday first baseman. I'm not doing that. Walker's an outfielder, and if he's going to be on this team next year, and he's going to be competing for you, contending on a contending team, it needs to be an outfielder. Alec Burleson's your first baseman next year. And the reason why I bring that up is because everything young player-wise starts to fit into place once you have Burleson at first base. Because now he's at first. Walker can play in the outfield. Donovan can do the thing where he's playing all over the place. He's your super sub no matter where you need him. Like anybody gets hurt, that guy can fill in at that spot on that day. And if you need an off day, he can fill in at that spot on that day. He's really good at that. He's capable. We've seen that. And then you've got like Nolan Gorman, who can play every day at second base or be a DH. Contreras can go over to DH. It opens that spot up for you. When you've got Burleson playing first, a lot of things unlock for what Ollie Marmol can do with the lineup next year. I like Paul Goldschmidt. I'm happy to see him hitting well again. This should not be something that affects 2025, unfortunately. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up next, it's our continuation of our Fantasy Football Friday segments. If you guys have a question with fantasy football heading into this year's draft, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll talk about some of those, give you some of our thoughts on the big news in the NFL lately as well, how it affects fantasy next year on 101 ESPN. All right, from now until the start of the regular season, a lot of you are going to be doing fantasy football drafts. So here on BK and Ferrario, each and every Friday, we will do a Fantasy Football Friday segment where we answer some of your questions. We'll go through some of the biggest news in the NFL and talk about how it relates to fantasy football for you guys. So that way, hopefully, you can win a bunch of money, have a bunch of success in your fantasy football seasons. T-Bone's very good at fantasy football. It frustrates the hell out of me. So we'll talk about that here on BK and Ferrario. So let's start out with this. We got the couple of questions that I want to answer first, and then we'll get to a couple of news headlines. Somebody from the 314 said, guys, if you had to draft one Detroit Lions player, you were limited to one Lions player this season, who do you think will be best for fantasy football?
I think I'm still going Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Over Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to use Gibbs. I mean, there was some frustration with fantasy users last year with Jahmyr Gibbs. I always lean towards a wide receiver over a running back because they have the potential to put up significant points, especially if you're playing in a PPR. Now, Gibbs has a little bit of that because he plays in the passing game a little bit more than some of the other running backs, but Amon-Ra St. Brown can easily give you like 15, 20 points every single fantasy week. And with Jared Goff in that offense, I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the number one guy I would take from the Detroit Lions, and I would have Gibbs right behind him at second.
I'm going Gibbs, personally.
They still have David Montgomery, though, right?
They do.
Yeah.
He takes away a lot of touchdowns from Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah. The reason why I'm going with Gibbs is because, guys, look around the league. Like, the running back position right now is just not great. I want an early running back this year. Normally, like the way that I typically try to draft is I go wide receiver heavy early on because there's just so much more certainty. The guys that you see in the first 3 rounds, wide receiver wise, like typically they stay healthy for the most part, and typically they produce at a really high level. I can't say the same thing about the running backs that you draft early. And so you get more of those running backs in the middle rounds. What's been happening lately, though, is those running backs that you're drafting in the middle rounds will get replaced. And so you drafted them, and then you have nothing left over. I feel like I need to get out of one of the first 2 rounds this year with a stud running back. And Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those guys that I really like because of his ability to help in the passing game. So I'm getting that added benefit. So for me, it would still be Jahmyr Gibbs. Amon-Ra's a great player, though, man. I've got no knocks against him. That's a good team to draft from. They've got a great offense. All right, next thing up here. Do you guys think that taking a quarterback later in the draft, talking about the 8th or the 9th round, for example, to get somebody like Kyler Murray, maybe a Jordan Love, is a smarter way to go about it this year than picking one in the 2nd or 3rd round like a Mahomes or a Hurts? So essentially, do you like going QB early or QB late this year, given what's available to you?
Oh, man. I typically try to go a little bit earlier on the quarterback just because, especially like a Kyler or Jordan Love, though I understand why you would think that way because like there's a chance that Arizona offense can be pretty good and Kyler could put up some points, and he's got some running value as well. Kind of the same for Jordan Love. I just want a guy that I can say I certainly believe in. Like I am certain I'm Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to get my 20 to 30 fantasy points from him every single week. There's no question about it. I think there's still some question on what Kyler Murray is as a quarterback. I think there's still some question as to what Jordan Love is as a quarterback. I would much rather take the quarterback a little bit higher rather than waiting a couple rounds, waiting until that 8th, 9th round to try and settle for kind of that middle tier quarterback room.
So the guys that I really like right now that are going pretty late in drafts are Jaden Daniels is one, because I think he's got real upside as a runner.
Rookies, I try to avoid rookie quarterbacks as much as possible in fantasy football.
Fair. I think he's going to start. That's always a question with rookies.
Well, that too.
And I think he's going to have a ton of value with his legs. I think he could be Justin Fields as a fantasy player. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be very good this year, but I think as a fantasy player, he's going to be excellent for you. The reason why I bring him up is because he's even later than the guys that were brought up in this scenario. So that, like, if I'm going to wait, I'm really waiting and just getting this massive upside. I think Jaden Daniels could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. That's what I'm waiting for, is to get that kind of upside. If I'm going to go kind of more towards the middle portion of the rounds, though, like Anthony Richardson, I'm aiming for massive upside at my quarterback position. It's so, like, everybody's kind of here. I want a guy that I can legitimately believe at the end of the year is getting top 5 quarterback upside. And to do that, I need to have the legs. So I'm not taking Kirk Cousins. I'm not taking probably Jordan Love. Kyler I consider, but if you can't run, I'm not interested in you in fantasy football for the most part.
It's interesting because like we have way different thoughts on like Richardson and Daniels, because like I do like the running ability. I also know like as a rookie for Daniels, it's going to be learning curves, but I've seen the injuries with the running guys, and it scares the crap out of me. Like BK shoots for upside, and we talk about this in just not even fantasy.
Guys that are like in that middle tier, like the Kirk Cousins of the world, Matt Stafford later on.
I'd rather have like Stafford and Cousins than the guys that are running like crazy.
But those guys, like I can pick up somebody that's similar to that and just stream them via waivers during the season.
Yeah,
like I could get JJ McCarthy in week 10 or Sam Darnold, whoever's starting for the Vikings is why I bring this up. Good situation for them there. Or Geno Smith. Like I can pick those guys up off of waivers if my guy gets hurt and I can make do for a couple of weeks. I can't replace the type of running value that Jaden Daniels or Anthony Richardson potentially have.
And the reason like I don't like those guys is because like they have a serious floor that drops. Like there is like you're talking ceiling. I also know the floor is Richardson's playing like 4 games and I wasted my whatever round pick it is on a quarterback that's not going to give me any value.
I don't care if I get third, fourth, fifth.
Because I go with certainty. How you like that?
Here's a question for you because we were talking about him a little bit yesterday. If you drafted Caleb Williams, how confident would you be with that pick?
In a home league, not very. Like I do a lot of underdog drafts, so it's best ball. For those that aren't familiar with it, basically the way that it works is you draft your team now, and then it's set for the entire season. There's no waivers, there's no trades. That's your team for the entirety of the season. It's a very long draft. It's like 18 rounds, so typically you draft 2 or 3 quarterbacks. The reason I bring that up, I like him for something like that, because there is some upside there potentially, and there will be usable weeks for him where he potentially scores, 3-4 touchdowns through the air, runs for 1 as well, and now I've got a good score out of Caleb Williams. For a fantasy draft where I've only got to use 1 quarterback every single week, I'm not really interested in Caleb Williams. Legs aren't a huge upside play for me. He's a rookie, to T-Bone's point there, and he needs to get the majority of his points through the air. Good situation. I'm not confident in that this year. If I'm going that route in the, like right now he's going in late 9th, early 10th round, I would rather have Jaden Daniels, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, and those are guys that are going behind him.
I'd rather have Rodgers and Stafford ahead of him. If you were doing super flex league, then yeah, okay, I'd hear him as like if you had to settle for him as your second quarterback, then I would be in. But in underdog, I agree with your take on the underdog thing. But if it's like you start 1 quarterback, your typical league, yeah, I'd much rather have like the veteran guys over Caleb Williams.
All right, next thing up here, this comes from the text line as well. Good questions today on the text line for Fantasy Football Friday. Guys, I can never find quality tight ends for my fantasy team. Outside of the top guys like Kelsey and Kittle, who do you have as your top tight ends or sleepers at the position going into this season? So I think there's actually like 6 really good tight ends this year at the position. You can even probably argue 7. Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta is going to be a great tight end this year. Some people have him as the number 1 tight end this year. Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, I think is going to be good this year. I know.
Don't do it.
Save it. And then Trey McBride for the Arizona Cardinals, I think is a really good tight end as well. He came on in the second half of last season. If you want to extend that, you could probably include Dalton Kincaid, who he's got some competition at the position, but there's really no number 1 wide receiver on the Bills. So you could go as many as 7 tight ends. I really want to get one of those 7. I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to play the waiver game and I've got like a Brock Bowers who I don't know about, TJ Hawkinson who might not be healthy for the first 6 weeks of the season, Dalton Schultz who goes up and down, but with all of the competition there target-wise in Houston this season, I don't know if that's the route that I want to go. I want a top 7 tight end this year, so I'm making that a priority when I go into my drafts.
I'm 100% with you because there is such a massive drop-off. You talked about that with running backs, how there's kind of a handful of guys that you really want, and then there's like that very muddy middle. That's how I feel about the tight end position, and that's how I kind of view them as wide receivers to where I want to get one early. And if I don't get one of those guys in that top 7 range, then I almost will feel like I have to make a trade for him when we get past the draft, because I don't see many guys outside of that top 7 that are really going to have significant like upside value. I do like Evan Ingram in Jacksonville. I think if you had to settle for like him, I think he's going to get a big target share this year with Jacksonville. I like him, but my goal this fantasy season is to land one of those top 7 guys that you said, and then in the later rounds get TJ Hawkinson because his value is going to be low because he's out for 6 weeks.
Put him on your IR spot if you've got that in your league.
And when he's healthy, he's a guy that will play up into that kind of top 7 range that we're talking about.
I think that's smart. I've gone with Mark Andrews a couple times in previous years. I always feel like, though, towards the end of the season, he ends up getting hurt. And he's always solid whenever he's playing, but once he gets hurt, man, like trying to fill that tight end spot.
Route, get yourself Isaiah Likely. Draft him in the last round of your draft and just keep him on your bench all season long.
Yeah, because once he drops off, like, my team's pretty much done after that. I have had terrible luck with him and Nick Chubb as my running back.
Chubb's
he's
the guy that we got a
great.
question about. I'm not interested in him this year. I got to see it before I believe it.
I'm not either.
I'm kind of with you guys.
When you have that kind of a significant knee injury, typically it's a year and a half before you're right, and that means the end of this season. Next year, I'll be much more interested in Nick Chubb. This year, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
All right, couple of news pieces before we get out of here and talk about the level of anticipation for Erick Fedde's debut tonight for the St. Louis Cardinals. Brandon Ayuk, according to a 49ers columnist on The Athletic, it appears that his absence has been noticeable, to say the least, at camp. This columnist said that he is the one, Brandon Ayuk is the one, that has the leverage in these negotiations, and that he fears that it's going to go pretty significantly into training camp and potentially into the season. We'll see on that. T-Bone, how is that affecting, if at all, your interest level in drafting Brandon Ayuk this year in fantasy football?
It's not affecting it at all for me. I don't think, I'm not buying what that writer is selling. I don't think he has any leverage still. And like worst case scenario, he maybe misses a week. Okay, I put him on my bench. When he's back and playing on the field, he's one of the best wide receivers in football. Take him. I have no worries about this. To me, this impacts nothing. He's still going to be one of the top guys that I'm targeting in fantasy football.
Next thing up, DeAndre Hopkins hurt his knee. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. That puts him right up towards the start of the regular season, if he's going to be ready for the start of the regular season. How's this affecting your interest level? And not only DeAndre Hopkins, but the entire Titans offense.
It drops off significantly. Now, I don't think anybody was really going for Will Levis, so there's nothing much you're losing there. I'm avoiding Hopkins, period. If he's up there, I may try and reach somewhere else at a wide receiver position. If he's the top one that's quote-unquote available, knee injuries scare me. And especially when you get close to that opening of the season, my fear is he's going to rush it, not be fully healthy, and say, well, no, I'm good, and then it really slows him down.
He's also 32 years old. So
Yeah.
You don't want a guy that's 32 coming off of knee injury going into the season. I hope everybody views it the way that T-Bone does. That way I can get DeAndre Hopkins late. I'll take him late, and that's fine by me. I'll put him on my bench for the first couple of weeks, and then we'll get him back in like week 3, week 4. He'll have 1,000 yards this year, and everybody will be happy. But I'm not taking him as high as he was going because there's legitimate concern about that knee. Final thing here, Justin Herbert. Ooh, buddy, this is not great news. The Chargers are charging again. He's going to be dealing with plantar fascia issues to start out the season. He's in a boot for at least the next 2 weeks. When asked about this, Jim Harbaugh did not give an answer when he was asked about how long he's been dealing with this. He said, I'm not getting into that. I'm not a doctor. Okay, cool.
Thanks, coach.
T-Bone, they don't really have receivers that I'm interested in going into the season. Maybe Joshua Palmer can get you a little something, but other than that, there's really nothing there. Are you drafting any Chargers this year?
I don't think so. Like, Herbert would have been the one I considered kind of in that second tier, third tier quarterbacks, but now, like, I just don't know where you're going to get the value because I don't trust they don't have great weapons, as you just said. And that roster as a whole offensively just isn't it for me. Like Gus Edwards at running back, I could care less about that. So, no, I think I'm out. I think I'm avoiding all Chargers at all cost.
It's crazy how fast that roster went from like a fantasy, just like you go there for your fantasy needs. Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, then you had Keenan Allen, and now those players are all gone, and you're avoiding that team at all costs because there's nobody that really interests me either on that team.
If you want a running back, you can try it. It's a running back roulette situation because nobody knows who's going to be getting the majority of the carries there, but whoever does is probably going to produce because they've got a really good offensive coordinator for the running game specifically. They have improved their offensive line in a big way. It's just anybody's guess as to who the running back's going to be that gets the carries. If you get it right, you're going to win a bunch of fantasy points, but if you get it wrong, you guys are going to do absolutely nothing for you. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. What's your level of anticipation for Erick Fedde's debut tonight? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Disappointing one last night for the Cardinals. They had a 4-2 lead going into the ninth inning, and then they allowed 3 runs as Ryan Helsley went out and earned a blown save last night, allowing 3 in the ninth inning. Cardinals lose the first of the series against the Cubs 5-4. They'll look to bounce back today as it's a 1:20 first pitch, an early one today for the Cardinals in Chicago. It'll be Erick Fedde's first start as a Cardinal going up against Javier Assad for the Cubs. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, so Erick Fedde's making his debut for the Cardinals tonight. You guys excited? What's your level of anticipation for this? Because when I got to the ballpark on trade deadline day and Tommy Pham was there, I was legitimately excited to watch him in a Cardinals uniform for the first time. And when he was announced as the pinch hitter in that spot, comes to the plate, bases loaded, like the excitement level was ramped up to a 10 at Busch Stadium. Now, I understand this is on the road, and so it's a little different. He's going up against the Cubs in Chicago, not here at home. I don't feel that same level of juice. I don't feel that same level of anticipation. And this is no disrespect whatsoever. I genuinely mean this to Erick Fedde. Because I thought it was a really good move. I think Erick Fedde is a better pitcher than he gets credit for. I think he's made some legitimate changes that are going to make him pretty much what Jordan Montgomery was here in St. Louis. A really nice pitcher that you like to have, especially when he's costing you $7.5 million next year. But my level of excitement for this start is basically my level of excitement for most like Kyle Gibson starts, but maybe a little more. Kyle Gibson, good pitcher. He's helped the Cardinals a lot this year. Having him in the rotation has been a massive boost for them. But it just doesn't really get you going very much. Do you guys feel the same way? Am I off on this? Are there Cardinals fans that are really juiced up about Erick Fedde making his debut tonight for the Cardinals against the Cubs?
I'm kind of with you because I've always said like he's just a slightly better version of Kyle Gibson. And I remember early on in the season we were like, Kyle Gibson, it's not sexy, but it's effective. You get 6 innings, it's like a good left tackle. I kind of feel like we acquired a new left tackle. That's what it feels like. I'm going to probably underappreciate it. I am kind of excited for it, but not really. But I just look at him and I say, man, he's like a 3 on a really good team. And people aren't getting like super excited about that. Like I bet Astro fans were like, Kikuchi, awesome. I can't wait to watch him start. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it translates here to St. Louis. He's now in a winning environment. We get to see him. He's got good numbers. He's got, I think, like the 2nd or 3rd best WAR among starting pitchers in all of baseball. But he's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just look at this and I'm like, okay, it's a Cardinals move, and he's going to go out there, he's going to pitch, and I'm going to watch it because I got to watch it. You have the reaction that Buster
Olney had, where I asked him, how about the Cardinals moves? He said, they were fine.
Yeah, they're fine. Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
Yeah, it was like your reaction like when we signed Mats. It's fine. Yeah.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, you're not excited to see Fedde, especially coming off of the loss last night. It has nothing to do with the Cardinals, and it has everything to do with, like, I think if you're going to be a pitcher that gets I can only speak for myself, really excited, it's got to be for like a specific reason, right? Like Sonny Gray, I was really excited to see him make his debut in a Cardinals uniform because like that dude's got some serious upside, and he's got swing and miss stuff, and the way he goes about it, he's super intense. Like there's something about watching Sonny pitch that for me, aesthetically speaking, is appealing. Like I like watching that guy go about his business. Lance Lynn is different in this regard, but like Lance Lynn's a fun guy to watch occasionally just because he's going to get a ton of traffic, and you're like, is he going to weasel his way out of this thing again?
I find Lance Lynn so infuriating to watch.
And so like that can be, depending on your perspective, either infuriating or kind of enjoyable, especially if it's not your team. Fedde's just like a good pitcher. A good pitcher. He's got the Kyle Gibson thing going for him. Yeah. It's not overpowering, but he's going to get guys out. He's going to be effective, and he navigates his way through a lineup. And so for me, like, is that super exciting? No, but it's good. It's good. It does the job.
Yeah, because it's kind of Gibson-y. It's got better swing and miss than like Michaelis, but even like in 2022 when Miles Michaelis was pitching really well, I don't know if I ever got super excited for like a Michaelis start. It's always just been, okay, these guys are good, but I don't. And maybe this is the way I look at it, because you mentioned upside with Sonny Gray. When Sonny Gray takes him out, I feel like I could see something special that night. Last night, 9 strikeouts. That's really impressive in 7 innings of work. Dylan Cease, when he took the mound for the San Diego Padres, you could see something special. In fact, he threw a no-hitter against the Washington Nationals. I just don't feel that way with Erick Fedde. I just know I'm going to see a good start, but it's not going to be anything where, like, I look at the box score the next morning and go, holy crap, he had 10 strikeouts? No, I'm probably going to go, 4 strikeouts, like 5 hits, 2 earned runs in 5 innings. Okay, yeah, that was fine.
I'm more excited about what the signing or what the trade means for the Cardinals than I am to watch him specifically pitch in any one individual game. That's how I feel about Erick Fedde. I feel about Fedde the way, but to a greater degree, how I felt about them signing Kyle Gibson. Because when they signed Kyle Gibson, I was like, this is a really nice move. It's a smart move. He found some stuff, like the sweeper has been a good pitch for him. He's going to eat a ton of innings for you. He's going to make your bullpen better. There's a trickle-down effect there by him getting deeper into the games. The same all of that stuff is also true with Erick Fedde. Just on an individual game basis, it doesn't get me going very much. All right, I do want to talk about a couple of pieces of news that have come out from Ollie Marmol earlier today. He was talking with reporters in Chicago. Cardinals versus the Cubs coming up at 1 o'clock. Steven Matz, according to Ollie, threw 2 innings in his first rehab assignment yesterday. Came out feeling great. The team plans to stretch him out to start, according to Katie Wu of The Athletic. She adds that Lance Lynn received an injection in his right knee to help with the inflammation. He's going to rest for 3 or 4 days, but the expectation is he's going to miss minimal time. That's good news on the Lance Lynn front. T-Bone, are you surprised that the Cardinals are planning to stretch out Steven Matz to bring him back to start potentially?
Yeah, because I just don't know where he's slotting into the rotation, because we've talked about it with Lance Lynn, and you mentioned that Katie Wu said he's probably expected to miss the minimal amount of time, so like 3 starts. My guess is Palante's either going to the bullpen or going down, so okay, now I've got a 5-man veteran starting rotation where guys can't go down in Sonny Gray, Erick Fedde, Miles Michaelis, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn. So where is Steven Matz slotting into this? And maybe it's them saying, well, we're going to stretch him out, we're going to buy time, and we're going to just see if something happens. And now we've got Steven Matz who can go into the rotation, and Palante can play in our bullpen if that scenario were to play out. But I just don't know if you really need that, because I've seen Andre Palante, who I'd feel more comfortable with as a 5 or 6 starter. I also saw some serious upside with Michael McGreevy of, okay, that guy could make a spot start if I had to. I just don't understand what the role is for Steven Matz as a starter on this team. And you can get him back a lot quicker in your bullpen, where I think he can actually play up, and we've seen play well out of the pen as a top, probably like arguably either your best lefty or your second best lefty, depending on how JoJo's feeling. I just don't understand what his role is as a starter on this team.
I think this is very simply them buying themselves time. So Giovanni Gallegos, by the way, has chosen to elect free agency. He's received his official release from the Cardinals as expected. They said that Riley O'Brien working his way back as well. Sounds like by like this time next week, he could potentially be ready for the Cardinals, maybe even earlier than that. I think Riley O'Brien is the next one that they're planning to have as a part of the bullpen. And they want to get answers on O'Brien first before they then make a decision on Steven Matz. That's my guess on kind of the order of operations here. The reason why I bring that up is because currently the one spot that you really have to play with in your bullpen is the Kyle Leahy spot in your bullpen. So Leahy probably will go down for O'Brien when O'Brien is ready to return. My guess is they want to see a couple of appearances from O'Brien before making a decision on him. And when they do that, you'll probably be to late August at that point. Now we get into early September. You either have that extra roster spot to be able to use Steven Matz as like the extra man, the 14th pitcher on the roster, or you decide to option Riley O'Brien down because things didn't go as planned. He's walking the world, whatever. It just didn't work for whatever reason. And now Steven Matz takes Riley O'Brien's spot in the bullpen, and maybe you call one other pitcher up. Maybe it's Graceffo, maybe it's McGreevy, whoever, and that becomes the guy that you have as that extra man, quote unquote, in your bullpen. Maybe it's Andre Palante, who just sticks around, and instead of going down to AAA to be extended as a starter, he's still a part of the big league roster. So I think they're just buying time here. I don't think they actually want Steven Matz to be a part of their rotation. I don't think that's part of their plans. I think they just see, okay, we've got a bit of a roster crunch. We want to see what Kyle Leahy has. We want to see what Riley O'Brien has. There's no rush to get Steven Matz back to the big league level. Let's see what we've got here, find out some answers on some of these guys first, and then we'll get Steven Matz back with our club when he's right, when he's healthy, when he's gone through this rehab stint.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
And that makes sense because I thought they were going to buy time on even Tommy Edmonds' injury when he was a Cardinal because they just want to wait till it's easier on roster decisions when you get those 2 extra spots in September. Because then you were talking on the position player side about Brandon Crawford potentially being DFA'd. Well, what's easier, DFAing a veteran or just buying time and then adding guys to the roster when it expands by 2 roster spots?
Yeah, that's my guess on what they're doing here. I think it's just let's buy some time. Let's see what this looks like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. And when that happens, then you potentially will see Steven Matz as a part of the roster.
I will say, I wouldn't be excited to see Steven Matz starting, but I would be excited to see him in the bullpen.
Absolutely.
I feel like
he was great there last year.
That would be the opposite of kind of how we feel about Erick Fedde today, in the sense that you feel like he's playing too high for his role. Like he's probably more of a 3 or a 4, and he's your 2. So you don't feel as good about that. But the opposite with Steven Matz is he's a starter. He has had that in the past. It's just he can't stay healthy. So if you put him in the bullpen, then he's playing down to his role. So you're putting a player that's better than what he is in a role that maybe doesn't fit him, but in a good way.
Yeah, I think that he is a reliever at this point. I don't know that he views himself that way, but like if the Cardinals decide to keep Steven Matz around for next season, and I don't know what their plan is going to be in the offseason, but if they plan to keep him, I think they should tell him train as if you're a starter and then expect you're going to be a reliever once we get into the regular season, right? Because everybody is stretched out once you get into spring training, and then you kind of determine roles from there. Because worst case scenario is they just end up being a reliever, and there's no harm in that. So he'll probably show up stretched out to be a starter, and then they get through camp and they're like, hey, you're not one of our 5 guys. You're going to be a lefty reliever for us going into this season. I don't think that's a bad thing. $11 million is a lot to spend on a reliever, but that's kind of what the cost is now. If you've got to do with legit swing and miss stuff, 1-year contract, $11 million, they could spend that on the open market for somebody like this as well.
Yeah, and he had the same issue as like Liberatore does when he starts, is he's having a really tough time getting right-handers out. So now you're set up for better success. You can find a left-handed lane for him, and you can put him in the bullpen there, and he can come in high leverage or low leverage depending on how you have him. But I think you're probably right. I think when you see those lefties, when they get older and they struggle against righties, best case of action, if you want to pitch for another like 5-6 years in the big leagues, is just, hey, I'm a bullpen arm at this point in my career, and that's okay. I can make really good money. Ask Matt Moore. He's done it for a while now.
Cardinals versus the Cubs later on this afternoon. 1:20 first pitch for that one. Erick Fedde making his debut for the Cardinals on the mound. 1:20 first pitch between the Cardinals and the Cubs at Wrigley. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. The Junk Drawer is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, you said yesterday, you texted us in our group chat saying, I've got something for the junk drawer tomorrow. What do you got for us, man?
Yeah, so I found a list of every NFL, MLB, and NBA stadium/arena ranked from the best, so first, all the way to the 90th of these three sports leagues, based on rankings on average by the reviews on Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, and Facebook. And my question to you is, what do you think are the 5 best stadiums of these 3 professional sports leagues?
All right, so I'm going to start with the NFL.
Okay.
I'm going to go on the stadiums that I think would probably be listed here. Grant, I want you to get in on this with me. I think Lambeau is probably somewhere in the top 10.
Lambeau Field was number 1.
Okay, that makes sense. Arrowhead somewhere up there?
Arrowhead did not crack the top 10. Trying to find Arrowhead.
Is Jerry World in Dallas on this list?
So Arrowhead, just for context, was 38th.
Wow. Okay.
Trying to find Dallas was 24th.
Okay. Grant, do you have any other NFL stadiums that you think would be up there? Any that immediately come to mind for you?
I'm wondering about, is it Acrisure Stadium now in Pittsburgh?
Oh, I could see that.
Oh, when you said that, I was like, what? Let's see. Pittsburgh.
Used to be Heinz Field.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. With 90 teams, it's a little hard to see them all.
Well, they must not be very high.
They are not in the top 10.
Is LA Stadium in the top 10 so far?
SoFi is 85th.
Okay.
Probably fan
I didn't think it would be
experience.
up there, but okay. Those are the NFL stadiums that immediately come to mind for me. Wrigley?
Wrigley was not in the top 5.
Is it in the top 10?
It was 8th.
Okay.
I'd put PNC up there.
PNC
Absolutely.
Park was 2nd of these.
Okay.
Of these 3 sports leagues. So I guess, by the way, I still have not found Pittsburgh Steelers home park, so I guess they're not even top 90.
Petco's one that I've always wanted to go to. I'm not sure that it would be top 10, but that feels like a good one.
Petco was not top 10.
Okay. Let's go.
It was 19th. By the way, I did find Steelers 16th.
Okay, so it's pretty high on that. Let's go.
What about the Giant Stadium?
That's a good one.
Oracle Park was 5th on this list. Just for context for you guys, because you guys are running through the NFL stadiums, the only other NFL stadium in the top 10, Lambeau Field, was 1. The other one was the Seattle Seahawks, Lumen Field.
Oh, okay. It's loud, but I don't know that it's one that I feel the need to go to.
Of the top 10, so you guys have gotten, 3 baseball ballparks, Wrigley, Oracle, and PNC. In the top 10, 7 are baseball
That
stadiums.
makes sense.
1 is an NBA arena, and then the 2, as we said, were the football
I'm guessing
fields.
Madison Square Garden is the NBA. Oh,
wow.
It was not in the top 10.
I don't know what else would be in the. Is Staples or old Staples now Crypto?
Crypto is 26th.
It's Golden State. Is their arena the one that's up there?
No, not top 10.
What the hell is in the top 10 for the NBA?
Think about it. It's where a lot of players love to go.
Boston?
No.
A lot of players love to go. Miami?
Beautiful. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Miami Heat Stadium arena, I should say, is the only NBA arena that is top 10, and it is 9th.
Okay.
The second one on this list, I can't believe this, just because there's nothing else nice in Oklahoma, is Paycom Center.
It's okay. I went to it. I saw a Thunder game versus the Cavs whenever LeBron was on the Cavs. It was a fine stadium. It was good.
Where does Busch rank on this?
Busch is 4th
Really?
on this
Wow.
list. Busch
Okay.
Stadium is 4th, only behind Lambeau Field, PNC Park, and Camden Yards.
Okay,
is
that's a
3rd.
good one.
And
That
that's
was
a
one that I
beautiful
was about to-
ballpark.
All right, give us the rest of the top 10. So Lambeau, PNC, Camden, Baltimore. Busch Stadium at number 4. Oracle from San Francisco is number 5.
Lumen Field, 6th, home of the Seattle Seahawks. 7th, Fenway Park. 8th, Wrigley Field. 9th, the Miami Heat Arena. And number 10, and this one's wrong, but it's number 10 here, Target Field, home of the Minnesota Twins.
I've heard good things about that.
I wasn't impressed. I gotta say, was not all that impressed. You know what the bottom 5 were in terms of
the worst stadiums? I would have to imagine, what is it called? O.CO, the Oakland Coliseum.
Yeah, Oakland Coliseum was second worst on this list.
The Angel Stadium has to be on there somewhere.
Angel Stadium was not bottom 5.
Really?
No.
I'm surprised by that.
Two of these are surprising for me. So the worst
wireless. What's Chicago's stadium now? The White Sox.
Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but it was not bottom 5. I'm surprised by this one. The worst stadium of these 90 that are here, these 3 professional leagues, the Commanders Field, home of the Washington Commanders. Like you said, Oakland second worst. Third worst, Allegiant Stadium. I don't really know why that's the case because that's a beautiful stadium. Yeah. Fourth, Levi Stadium, home of the San Francisco 49ers. And then the fifth worst is Golden One Center, the home of the Sacramento Kings.
That makes sense. I'm a little surprised. Like, Fenway not being in the top 10 is a little surprising to me.
Fenway was 7.
Oh, Fenway is on there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm glad about is... I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this. Do you have a lot of interest in going to Yankee Stadium? For some reason, that one doesn't do much for me.
I want to go.
I love New York. I would love to go to a baseball game there, and like if I had the opportunity to go to Yankee Stadium, I'm fine with it. But it doesn't. There's not like that level of anticipation of going to a Camden Yards or a Fenway or a Wrigley, or even like San Diego, San Francisco.
I'm kind of
that same pull for me.
I'm kind of with you. I just want to go once, and then I don't know if there's like major pull for me. Like, I'd love to go back to PNC, Camden Yards. I thought those are the 2 best stadiums in Major League Baseball. But I'm kind of with you. Like, Yankee Stadium, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me.
Feels like a lot of the stadiums that have been built within the last like 20 years are very cookie cutter.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Do you guys agree that Busch should be this high?
No.
Here's what I will say, though. I have a couple of friends from New York who, they go around to a whole bunch of different stadiums. They're trying to see as many stadiums as possible. Busch Stadium is always, when people come in from out of town, high on the list of stadiums.
It's a great environment. Like that, I think that's the thing that we probably almost underrate, because like best fans in baseball becomes this moniker, right? And like it is true. It's a great atmosphere to watch a baseball game. That is 100% accurate. Like the stadium itself, though, if we're just judging on that, it's like a 7 out of 10. Like it's a good stadium. They did a good job with it. I think T-Bone's right, though. Like, it is pretty cookie cutter. I like the Budweiser Terrace. That's really cool. I think they've really done a good job, especially in recent seasons with the concessions, to upgrade that area of things. And it's easy to navigate for the most part, which is helpful, and it's big. But otherwise, like, it doesn't... The picturesque scene of the arch in the backfield, the backdrop is also great. So that's part of this as well. I don't know, man. It's not...
Like, I'm looking at this list. Like, I've been to PNC, better. Camden Yards, better. Oracle Park, never been, but looks better. I mean, you're right there on the water. Fenway Park, better. I wasn't that big a fan of Wrigley, but I hear an argument Wrigley Field better because it's old and historic. Target Field, to me, no. American Family Field, which is Brewers, no. Progressive Field, no. Great American Ballpark, maybe. Citizen Banks Park, I think, is better. Coors Field at 15 felt low.
Coors is great.
It's a beautiful ballpark.
It's also a cool area.
Mountains in the backdrop. I think that's a better stadium. Like, I think
the thing that
Busch is
there's
like
a couple of appeals to
top
Busch.
10.
1, great atmosphere. 2, picturesque background. That's the thing to me. Like, when I go to Pittsburgh, the big part of it that is like the reason why you go to PNC is the backdrop, right? You've got the Clemente Bridge in the backdrop, right beyond the outfield for you, and that's amazing. And that, for people that are coming from out of town, to see the arch in the backdrop of Busch Stadium is pretty damn cool, man.
I don't know if it's
like fringe top 10.
I don't know if it specifies on there, but I feel like this list relies on 1, like fan experience and fan engagement, and 2, the landscape. Because for Lambeau to be number 1, I would think that's really just because of the fans and how passionate they are.
And it's historic.
It's historic.
Yeah. I think that's a big part that's playing into some of these, but like Wrigley, the actual feel, like the stadium itself, I don't know if it's like a great place to watch a baseball game necessarily.
It's cool because it's like you walk around, you're like, wow, this is historic. You got
Fenway
the ivy.
sightlines can be terrible depending on where you're sitting. Like, there are obstructed views.
Yeah, when I was at Wrigley, the game I went to a Cardinals-Cubs game, and where I was sitting, like, I couldn't see like half of home plate because there was a freaking pole in my way.
Yeah, that's the problem with some of these older stadiums, but there's so much history there, man. Like, that is the pull to go to them. So it's a two-sided coin. You've got the good with the bad, and for me, like, the history of it all is what is appealing. That's why I want to go to those stadiums. And then places like PNC, going out to San Francisco, like, those are about the stadiums. being able to be in that environment. It's pretty cool. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, I want to talk a little bit about Mizzou today because there was a piece yesterday on ESPN.com on the top contenders for this year's college football playoff and what's working for and against them. There was one thing in particular that could go against Mizzou this year. We'll tell you what that is at 1:15. But coming up next, do you find yourself having a hard time investing in the St. Louis Cardinals right now? T-Bone said something about that earlier today that I found interesting. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. All right, so the Cardinals right now have a couple of young stars that are emerging. Alec Burleson and Mason Wynn are that for you. Paul Goldschmidt is starting to perform once again. Sonny Gray looked great last night and so far this season. I mean, you just look at the overall numbers. He's been a really good pitcher for the Cardinals. Has a 3.7 ERA on the season. And despite, a bad month of July, otherwise has been everything the Cardinals traded for him to be and potentially even then some. But it's hard for some people, and Ryan Helsley, by the way, despite last night being a terrible night for him, he's been great on the season and has already matched his number of saves over the past 2 years combined just so far this year. Despite all of that, I'm curious, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Are you having a hard time investing in this team? Are you having a hard time really getting emotionally invested in your 2024 Cardinals? T-Bone, we were talking a little bit about this earlier today, and it feels like you may be having some commitment issues with the Cardinals this season.
I am having commitment issues. The National Girlfriend's Day was yesterday.
Was it?
Yeah.
How'd you celebrate?
I didn't celebrate. It was a little hurtful, though, that Snapchat sent me a reminder about National Girlfriend's Day. Like, man, I may have to delete Snap. But I am having commitment issues, and I don't really know why, because this team is... They're good. They're above 500, 3 games above 500 coming into today's game against the Chicago Cubs. But I don't know. I can't find myself like really invested into this team. Like, I think the last team I was invested in was 2022. Of course, not last year, but that team was awesome to me. You had an MVP in Paul Goldschmidt, guy that finished third in MVP voting in Nolan Arenado, and you had Albert Pujols, who was chasing 700 home runs. You get Jordan Montgomery, who comes into that team late, pitches awesome, along with Quintana, and you had Adam Wainwright, who was really good that year. That team was really fun, on top of like Ryan Helsley, who was awesome. But then I look at like this year's team, and maybe it's just because like when the season started, I was like, this is Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado's team, and they're not playing very well. I just look at them and I go, man, they are lacking like just a superstar. You know, Mason Wynn's fun. I really enjoy watching Mason Wynn. He's not a superstar, though. I bet if I asked some people that weren't in St. Louis, hey, who's Mason Wynn? They'd go, I have no idea. And same with Alec Burleson.
I don't care about that, though.
I just don't think people would. But it's hard for me to really buy into those guys.
Stars.
Sure, they're producing like stars, but they're not superstars. And I think those are the guys that I really gravitate towards. This pitching staff is just fine. It's old dudes that are fine. The bullpen only has like one guy that you really like, and it's Ryan Helsley. Everybody else is fine. And then they're 3 games above 500, and I don't know. To me, they're just not that good of a baseball team still.
The reason why I asked this question is because the original topic that we were going to do here was, are you enjoying watching the team more since the trade deadline? Because for me, I've really enjoyed the last 3 days of watching Cardinals baseball. Since Tommy Pham got here, it feels like there's some kind of like renewed energy within the club. The first 2 games were amazing because you won by a combined score of 18-2. And everything feels better when you're winning big, something that the Cardinals have rarely done this season. They won 2 games by 7 or more runs. They had won 1 game the previous 106 games of the season by that kind of margin. So they finally were putting teams away. That's a big part of it. But also, like, Tommy Pham has that kind of bleep you energy that this team desperately needed. Wilson Contreras has some of that. Mason Wynn has some of that. I think Alec Burleson is a really fun player to watch right now. Michael Ciani is now producing offensively while also maintaining Gold Glove defense in center field. Paul Goldschmidt finally starting to hit the baseball hard and get real results out of it. So, like, I'm watching this team lately, and I've had a lot of fun watching them over the last 3 days. I think this team has become a pretty enjoyable watch. Now, the ending was brutal last night. Didn't like that. That wasn't particularly enjoyable as a Cardinals fan. But the game itself was really entertaining, man. It was back and forth. Mason Wynn with the big home run, the big play for Sonny Gray to get out of the 7th inning, hits a dribbler back to him. He gets it to second, super aggressive move by him, and then Mason Wynn throwing it over to first with a rocket over. Like, I'm having fun watching this team right now. And so that's where we kind of diverge a little bit is I am starting to get recommitted. I feel like there was a little bit of time there coming out of the All-Star break where it's like, man, they're getting beat by Washington. Like the Pittsburgh series, it was you win the game against Skeens, but then the other 2 games, your offense kind of goes stale. Like it just, ugh. And then finally you get to the All-Star break and boom, the energy is there. I'm going to be curious to see what that looks like over the weekend and if they can maintain it. My hope is that they can, and if they do, I think this could be a really fun finish to the season, man. But I know that there's a lot of people that are on your side of things where they're not allowing themselves to get there.
And we got this text, and maybe this is why I just have a tough time really investing into this team. This comes from Rob on the text line that says, seeing the progression of the young core helps, but we need them to make a playoff run, which means winning at least a playoff series. And maybe that's just kind of where I am is like, I just look at this team and I go, they're not great at really anything. And I just don't think you can win in the playoffs that way or maybe even get to the playoffs. I mean, right now they're on the outside looking in. And maybe that's where I fall is I think this team's a above 500 team. But I don't know if you're really a great baseball team at all. I think you're fine. And when you're kind of stuck in that muddy middle, like maybe you win a playoff series. But I just feel like already, like I can already feel myself saying like, man, they make the playoffs, they're probably going home. Like that's just where I am right now. Like Sonny Gray's an ace. Erick Fedde's okay. We just talked about it. Like, am I excited about his debut today? I mean, I'm only going to watch it probably because I have to watch it for work. I don't know. I just can't find anything about this team where they've got some fun pieces, but I can't invest in this team just because I just don't know if they're going to do anything that's meaningful in the home stretch here of this season.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the same page. There's nothing that really grabs me and pulls me into watching these games. And like I've never been a super passionate baseball fan. Like I'm a hockey guy, but in 2022, I was pretty dialed in with the team, and it wasn't just because of Albert. Like I was entertained by that team. For some reason right now, it's just not pulling me in. Like, even with the Blues games, and again, I'm a hockey guy, so this makes sense. They're sort of in the same situation, if not, they're a little bit worse off right now than the Cardinals. But I'm still
hard to watch too.
Yeah, the Blues sucked to watch most of the season.
But I'm still invested in watching guys like Jake Neighbors, and I guess you can say you're invested in watching Mason win. It could be
because like Jake Neighbors, and I liked Jake Neighbors a lot. Jake Neighbors was less fun to watch than Mason Win. Like just objectively speaking, if we're just doing 1-for-1 young players emerging, like Mason Win is.
The Blues had this feel for me too last year. Like we would have our show and we would talk like, oh, maybe they can kind of sneak their way into the playoff conversation. I just looked at that team and went, man, they just do not shoot the puck. It's in their zone the whole time. Bennington stealing them games. Like, they're just not this team for me.
I felt like there was a stretch of games where the Blues became fun, but it was like more of a stretch than it was in a long.
And that stretch was more like, holy crap, they can play fun hockey.
I do feel like, though, at one point last year we were talking about, man, if this team can just get in, you never know what Jordan Bennington could do.
That's how I feel about the Cardinals, though.
Do you?
But see, and maybe this is where it differs for me.
I feel like with baseball,
I don't.
I feel like the thing is, like, with hockey, you need that goalie, right? You need a goalie to get hot. And the Blues had that potential with Jordan Bennington in net where, who knows, maybe he could win you a series if nothing else. Baseball is different in that, dude, I have no idea who's going to win in the postseason. Like, I know people think that they know who's going to win this year in the playoffs. Like, go ahead and write that down at the very beginning of the postseason, or place your bet on it over on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois, because you could potentially win a decent amount of money off of it. I don't think anybody actually has any clue how to predict postseason baseball at this point. It's just such a crapshoot, man. So, like, can the Cardinals win the World Series this year? I'd be really surprised by it. I don't think this team is capable of that. But I genuinely did not think that the Diamondbacks were capable of it last year. I thought the teams that were best set up to potentially go on a run were teams like Toronto or Seattle because of the pitching that they had. And they both stunk in the postseason once we got there last year. So, could they do it? Sure, man, because, like, I don't know who can actually do it anymore in the postseason. And, like, the Dodgers may have me, T-Bone, and Grant pitching in their rotation once we get to the postseason. The Phillies are running on fumes right now. I think they're going to be fine, but they're scuffling a little bit. And the rest of the National League isn't very good. So could they do something in the postseason? I think they could.
And maybe this is why
that's probably where we go into the fork in the road.
And this is also maybe where we fork in the road. I didn't think if the Blues got in, they had a chance to even win a series this year, even with Bennington. They just had no offense, And that's kind of how I view. You mentioned it's kind of like pitching in October. Did the Blues have the goalie? Yeah, but I also said like they had like the Cardinals offense, which wasn't good enough. And I look at the Cardinals and say, well, they don't have the goalie because they don't have good enough pitching to go up against all these other teams that are going to make the playoffs. Maybe that's just where I am. Is when I look at these middling teams, I do kind of agree that you can create a path for yourself, especially in hockey and especially in baseball in the playoffs. But you got to be elite at something. And this Cardinals team isn't elite at really anything. Their bullpen has scuffled a little bit down the stretch. They've got some arms that maybe you can piece it together, but I think they're missing that fourth high leverage arm depending on what Armstrong looks like. They've recently acquired him. Does JoJo really right the ship by the time we get to October? I don't know. I'm skeptical. I just look at this team and say, they're good. So, they make the playoffs. It's fraudulent to me.
Here's a follow-up for you. And we'll get to Mizzou on the other side here in just a minute.
Another bad team.
Let's stop that. If people aren't buying into this team, and like we know, I remember 2019, you got to the playoffs, they end up in the NLCS, and the stadium's not sold out because people weren't really sold on that team either. You could argue 2022 people bought in, but I think that was as much about Albert as it was the actual St. Louis Cardinals in 2022, right? What does it take now for people to buy into the Cardinals? Because it's clearly more than this. And I'm not telling you necessarily that you should be buying in. They're 3 games above 500. By run differential, they should be a below 500 team. Like, I'm not pushing back much. I'm just curious where people are at on this right now. What do you think it would take for people to start buying in again? Because you do have young players that have come through the system that are starting to emerge as maybe not superstars, T-Bone, to your point, but like star type of production with Alec Burleson, Mason Wynn. You do have a starting pitcher at the front end of your rotation that's kind of pitching that way with Sonny Gray. You do have a reliever that is considered to be among the best in baseball. You're above 500 and in the midst of a playoff run at the minimum. What do you think it takes now, considering we're almost 10 years removed from the last team that Cardinals fans really, truly, completely believed in back in 2015, for this fan base to be all the way engaged, all the way believing in the Cardinals again?
I think it takes 2015 kind of throws a wrench in this because I don't know if they had this, but I think you do need a superstar. Like, I think back at the teams of, like, my childhood that I would invest in, they had Albert Pujols, a superstar. And even that 22 team, like, if you removed Pujols from that team, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado were fan favorites because they were producing and they were top 3 in the MVP voting that season. And they were awesome that year. And I think it comes down to winning as well. And not just winning and being above 500. Because I think the standard here in St. Louis is 90-plus wins every year and also fighting for the NL Central. If you even want to look at that, the NL Central debate, okay. But I think it's 90-plus wins, a team that is actually winning and winning in a meaningful way. I think 90-plus wins falls into that category. And then I think you probably have to have a superstar on your team because that is the kind of player that you can really invest in. That's going to be kind of the guy that is known nationally that you're going to look at and say, that's our guy. That's our guy that I'm taking up against anybody else in the sport. And you got to be winning baseball games and probably winning in October on top of those 90-plus wins for me.
I feel like I could buy into this team a little bit more if their wins were a little bit more convincing. And someone brought up this on the YouTube chat. How about getting a positive run differential? They're the 4th worst team in the NL in terms of run differential right now. And like, it's great that you're winning 1-run games and close games and that you're doing well in that category, but you shouldn't be in that many games. Like, if you're in those games come playoffs, you're probably not getting a lead against good teams. So, like, you're going to have to come from behind. You're going to have to, get a lead too. They can't do that. And they just struggle in that category. They can't just blow out a team. They did it a couple times after the Tommy Pham and Erick Fedde trade. But if they can't continue to do that and they can't continue to prove that we're better than what we were before the trade deadline, then it's hard to buy into a team like that.
Yep. It seems to me like the answer is they just need to win in the playoffs. Like, there's going to be almost like a, for lack of a better term, like flop lag, where like next year people will start to buy into the team more because of what they did this year. If this year they go on a playoff run,
you saying
so
that
it'll almost be like applicable to future teams as opposed to like this one.
You saying that made me think because you asked like who's the last team that fans bought in or what would it take in 2015. That's probably right. Who's the last team that Cardinals fans that looked at when they got to October said they might go on a run?
14 or 15 probably was the last one.
I was going to say, was 22 that team? Like, I feel like there were holes on that roster that we
I remember making the case. Like, yeah. I believed in that team because I am somebody that believes, like, once you get to October, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's a crapshoot. So I made the case for 2022. Like, hey, you've got a couple of MVP candidates here. You've got a closer. You've got a couple of pitchers that if you squint, like, hey, maybe they can carry you through even though it's light. And the National League, once again, was kind of weird that year, was wonky. So, yeah, could they have made it? Sure, they didn't, and they end up losing in the wild card round. We know what happened there with the Phillies series. But, yeah, like that team I believed in, but I don't think most Cardinals fans did. 21 people didn't believe in because it took like a 17-game winning streak to get there.
And 19 people weren't a fan of.
20 was a fake season. 19 people didn't really believe in that team either. So, yeah, like before that, you'd have to go back to 14 or 15. And 15 was a 100-win team, but it was kind of weird the way they got there. No, every 100-win team deserved to win 100 games.
Every pitcher, on that roster, like played at like the 100th percentile outcome, including like John Lackey.
Like 14 is probably the last time people were really believing in the Cardinals in that way.
I don't know the case because I was young. Do people believe in that 13 team? Because they got to the World Series.
Yeah, the 13 team was really good. There were not a whole lot of warts with that 2013 team. They just ended up running into a juggernaut, and David Ortiz was David Ortiz.
Yeah.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about Mizzou. Something that can work against them is the schedule. How big of a limitation is that for them? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. We're going to call an audible here. We're going to talk about Mizzou. We'll do that at a later date. There's some big news for St. Louis City SC. Good work by Grant for seeing this. According to Tom Bogert, MLS Insider, the New England Revolution are nearing a deal to acquire center back Tim Parker from St. Louis City SC in a trade that will send Henry Kessler to St. Louis. Further details includes New England also getting some allocation money. Final details are still coming. But according to this report from Tom Bogert, it appears that St. Louis City SC is going to be trading Tim Parker. Man, this is an interesting one and a pretty surprising one to me, T-Bone. I know that the defense has been pretty bad for St. Louis City SC this year, and I don't know that you were ever the biggest Tim Parker fan
Kind of slow.
in his time in St. Louis, but I mean, from the moment that he was brought here, he was one of the leaders of the team, one of the faces of the team that ended up being really good last year. What's your level of surprise to this one? What's your reaction to the news?
I do find it a little surprising because I thought they wanted someone like him as like a veteran leader on that defensive kind of back line there. But you're right. I mean, the defense as a whole has been bad this year. I thought it wasn't great last year. I thought they were bailed out by Roman Berkey playing like a all-star, playing at an unbelievably high level. And you kind of saw that kind of come to an end and how their season ended last year and in the final stretch. My other reaction to this is it tells me that they're ready to move on from what was the original core. And, you know, alarm bells were going off when you had the weird moment with Sam Adeniran and Bradley Carnell at the time when he was the head coach. Well, what do? They fire Bradley Carnell. They try to work it back out with Sam Adeniran. Doesn't work. They move on from him. Now they're moving Tim Parker. I think they've come to realize that this core, for whatever reason, had its flash-in-the-pan moment last year and is not one that's going to work in the long term here. And I think that's why you've really started to see them start to move on from some of their pieces. And it makes me wonder if Tim Parker's not the last one to go either, by the way. It makes me wonder about a Klaus, a Leuven, a Roman Berkey. Those guys were also a part of the core because unlike Adeniran, who reading the tea leaves sounds like he was a bit of a problem with that club, I didn't get that sense with Tim Parker at all. So it makes me wonder if they are looking at this core saying, okay, it's time to go in a different direction, move for our next group here. That's what my kind of initial reaction to this is they're ready to move on from what was the original core from the original expansion team.
Man, this is a big one. I'm pretty surprised by this, and maybe I shouldn't be because it's just been the year from hell for St. Louis City SC. And how old is Tim Parker? I have to imagine he's getting 30, a little higher up there at this point. So it could be as simple as, hey, this is not the season any of us were expecting. Not as old as I would have expected. Not the season any of us were expecting here, and it's time for us to get a little younger at the position. And Henry Kessler is a center back who is 26 years old. So you're getting a little bit younger. He's got some size. He's 6'4". He's had some U.S. men's team experience in the past, played for the under-21 team, played for them during the Gold Cup back in 2021 as well. So I guess that's the explanation here is just, hey, let's try something new. Let's get a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more athletic on the back end and see if we can kind of piece this thing together. But coming off of last season, none of us expected it to go in this direction this year. I thought they would probably have a sizable step back. Yeah. I didn't expect them necessarily to be one of the worst teams in the league.
I felt like 4-6 in the West was kind of what my expectation was, where they really overexceeded last year, and you're going to fall back to earth a little bit, but they never righted the ship from really that final month stretch where they limped into the playoffs and then get knocked out in the playoffs, and they never found their footing this season, both defensively, offensively. Everything went awry. They tried firing the coach, and we talk about it. We go back to the Army quote from when they fired Craig Berube. It was just trying to now, he's probably not the main reason that you're losing as a either hockey club or soccer club in this scenario, but you're just trying to narrow down that hourglass to see, okay, what is the problem? And now it looks like they're saying, maybe we were too old. Maybe we had guys that were not great in our locker room, and now they're trying to get younger.
It's also possible Tim Parker said, hey, I'm not coming back.
Yeah, that too.
Because he's on an expiring deal. I just looked that up to make sure that I was right on the timeline of it. He's got an expiring deal. He's 31 years old. Maybe he said, hey, I don't see a future here in the immediacy where we're going to start winning again. And I want to do some winning while I have the opportunity to do so while I'm still kind of at the back end of my prime. And I wouldn't blame him for that. He was a stand-up dude. Everything that you hear is like, obviously was super involved within the community. And my guess is it just came, this is purely speculation by me. My guess is City probably said, hey, what do you want to do here? What's kind of the long-term outlook for both parties? And ultimately, they came to the conclusion, for the betterment of the team, for the betterment of Tim Parker, hey, let's go ahead and see if we can get a cheaper, younger player in Henry Kessler, and we'll see what that looks like the rest of this season. We're going to have to overhaul this roster over the next couple of seasons. Man, that's a big one. If you missed it, the news of the day for St. Louis City SC, Tim Parker is expected to be traded to the New England Revolution in a deal that will send Henry Kessler, a 26-year-old center back, to St. Louis. St. Louis City SC, according to Tom Bogert, an MLS insider, is also sending allocation money to New England in this deal. So one of the biggest pieces from last year's shocking and fantastic St. Louis City SC season is no longer going to be on the roster. That's the big news for St. Louis City. All right, for Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's got to go in a game we call One Gotta Go here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. After their 5-4 loss last night in Chicago, Cardinals are back in action right now. They're through one inning. Erick Fedde got through his first inning as a Cardinal. No runs against after allowing a 2-out triple. Again, no score up in Chicago in Game 2 of the series for the Cardinals. In other news around St. Louis City SC has traded Tim Parker to the New England Revolution, according to MLS insider Tom Bogert. In return, St. Louis City SC gets Henry Kessler from New England. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Count that big bang. All right, let's get into One's Gotta Go. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's gotta go here on BK and Ferrario. Let's start out with this one. One's gotta go Olympic events. Swimming, sprinting, water polo, or gymnastics.
Interesting. I think I'm gonna go with water polo, mostly because I don't know how you stop anybody in that sport. It looks really hard. I never want to play it. I would say water polo. I find the gymnastics stuff to be a little interesting, especially because you got Simone Biles to go. Swimming, you've got why am I drawing blank on her name? Who's been dominating? Yeah, thank you. And then sprinting, there's not a big name in sprinting, but there's some fun track and field events that go on, team relays. I think it'd be water polo for me.
I think it would be sprinting for me. Super talented.
Not interested?
I just don't care to watch it, to be honest. Like, I don't know, anything that goes around a track, even like horse racing, NASCAR, I don't know. I just find it a little bit boring.
Don't like it when they make a left turn?
I can go without it.
We watched the Sprint series on Netflix. Surprisingly pretty good. I mean, it doesn't take
on Netflix.
So it's about the sprinters. So Sha'Carri,
I didn't know that was a thing.
Noah Lyle, like they had, it's probably like 4 or 5 different people that are prominently featured in the series. And it kind of follows their path to this year's Olympics, right? So it gets you set up kind of for what this weekend's going to be with the sprinters starting to really get involved. I thought it was good. It doesn't take much for them to capture me, though, with these kinds of documentaries. Get a couple of montages, play some music, tell me about how big the event's going to be.
For a good montage.
Yeah, like I'm in. All right, cool. Yeah, you got me involved. I'm 100% invested now. So it doesn't take much, and once you get me involved with that, I'm in. So I like the sprinting stuff. I would say water polo for me. Dude, if somebody tried to dunk me, I'm not a guy that's going to fight, right? Like, that's just not, you guys know me. It's not going to, I will start throwing punches immediately.
Throwing hands at water?
100%.
Oh, you're the guy that's so
Dude, if they try to dunk me the way that they do in that, I'm out. It's like kickboxing. If you put me in a boxing match, I'm going to get my ass kicked, but I'll stick in there, right? You start kicking my shins, I'm out. I'm done. I'm walking out. I'm leaving the arena. I'm done. The dunking under the water, I'm out. No chance. Not interested. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. One's got to go bar food edition. Cheeseburgers, wings, pizza, potato skins. I don't like potato skins. I know Alex said the other day that he apparently ordered potato skins whenever you guys went to Obie Clark's. I'm good on potato skins. I don't need that.
Yeah, I'm out on potato skins as well. It's just not my thing. I'd much rather have a good pizza, some wings really fit the mood, and a good cheeseburger, especially if it's a smash burger. Oh, yeah. The potato skins, get those out of here.
Yeah, potato skins don't really interest me all that much. If I'm going to go for something that's like potato, I'm not going potato skins.
Just give me French fries.
Yeah, give me fries, tater tots.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oh, tater tots with a good beer cheese, in.
I don't need the beer cheese. I love tater tots, though. I feel like I've gone back to my childhood where I'm like, you know what, tater tots, excellent, underrated.
You love the
vessel
like
for
smiles
potatoes.
now. What are those like?
No, those are not good. Those are not good.
Okay, so we haven't gone completely back to your childhood.
No,
yet.
not all the way. Like, I'm not eating dino nuggets on a regular basis at home.
Okay, just making sure.
Bagel bites, I'm good on those as well.
Bagel bites where like they're not really warm, but you just settle for.
Yeah,
you know what?
like,
I'm tired of waiting.
I think bagel bites still hit.
Really?
I
still like those.
Pizza rolls, I'm in.
I was about to say pizza rolls I've still got. But
Bagel bites, no.
I haven't had a bagel bite in, years, dude.
I probably haven't had that since like I was in high school, and I'd like drive home for lunch, and I've had like 15 minutes, let the dog out, quickly get your food ready, eat it, just go real quick, and then get back to school.
100%. All right, one's got to go hygiene edition. Shaving, deodorant, shampoo, or haircuts. Shaving, deodorant, shampoo, or haircuts. If I have to get rid of one of these and I can never do it again, I guess haircut. So I'm just going to have long hair.
I think that's where I am.
The neck beard bothers me. Like, I can't get rid of shaving because the neck beard would drive me absolutely insane.
Can I use dry shampoo?
What?
I feel like if shampoo is included in the label, we probably can't use it. And I'm not getting rid of deodorant or shampoo. That's gross, man.
There's nothing worse than just not feeling like.
So yeah, I guess I gotta have the haircut.
But you could use conditioner.
Let's go man bun.
No,
you just use conditioner.
Yeah, but you're not actually
with a man bun
in that scenario.
Yeah, but actually, like, it's been proven like it's unhealthy to shampoo your hair like
Too
lot.
often. Yeah, you got to do it like a few times a week.
So, but if you train your hair, like if you don't shampoo your hair very often, there's people out there that go months without shampooing their hair and it just becomes their natural hair, but it's not in like a nasty way. Like they just stop producing as much oils.
I would have to say grow my hair out because one, I would not want to get rid of the shampooing your hair. I wouldn't want to get rid of the deodorant, and I would just look stupid if I didn't shave. It would look all, I can't grow any facial hair, just in spots. It's sad, and it would look bad.
All right, one's got to go. Fantasy Football First Round Edition. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Jamar Chase. Which of those 4 first-round picks are you getting rid of? CeeDee, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, or Jamar Chase?
I think it's Jamar for me. Tyreek's just a different level. CeeDee Lamb as well. He's kind of their main target guy. They've got like Brandon Cooks as a second guy. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, like he still dominates the target share, even though they've got some decent weapons in Williams and Sam Laporta. But I think for me, it's Jamar Chase. I just don't think he can put up as big and explosive games consistently enough like those other 3 guys can.
Amon-Ra's got to get out of here.
Wow.
Jamar Chase is a different level. CeeDee Lamb, different level. Tyreek Hill, different level. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's going to catch like 100 passes this year. He doesn't have that kind of explosiveness.
And I'm probably biased because I've had Amon-Ra the last 2 years to win our fantasy league.
Good player. Jamar Chase can put up a 50-point game this year. Amon-Ra's never going to do that. So for me, Amon-Ra's the one that's got to get out of here. This is what, like, we look at these things, ceiling, floor. T-Bone is all about the floor. Give me 20 points every single week to get me to the end of the year. I'm about, can you get me 50?
50 in a game for Jamar.
I mean, it's unlikely, but he's capable of doing something like that.
No.
I think I would get rid of Jamar as well.
Yeah.
I think if you put
Amon-Ra, he's going to have a
Amon-Ra,
monster season, dude.
I think if you put Amon-Ra with Joe Burrow, though, like you get that kind of production.
I do not. I think Jamar Chase is just, that dude is, he had in one game, this was in 2022 against the Chiefs. I will never forget it.
So you're going off of one game?
Yeah, it's the ceiling, right? 11, I mean, he's also been amazing. He's a top 5 receiver in the NFL. 11 receptions for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. So in that game, he literally had 50 fantasy
I'd say that
points.
probably would have been a 50 fantasy point game.
That is the kind of thing that at any time he can go off for that kind of a game. I just don't think there's any scenario where Amon-Ra has that in his range of outcomes. Like, he's a proven touchdown maker. The dude can take a 20-yard gain and put it into 50. Amon-Ra is just more of a slot receiver. Nothing wrong with that, but he wins more like Wes Welker does. Jamar wins more like Debo when he's lined up outside. That kind of a game. So that's why I would go that way. All right, he's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis, and I'm Brandon Kiley. We're going to wrap things up with our final segment of the week, BK and Ferrario Rewind, coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
If you go over there after the show today, you'll see our interview with Buster Olney, ESPN's Major League Baseball insider. I had a great conversation with him about the Cardinals deadline. He said that on Sunday, Cardinals versus Cubs on ESPN, they're going to have Tommy Pham mic'd up, which is certainly something that we'll be looking forward to. So that'll be on the broadcast on Sunday. Talk a little bit of Cardinals here before we get to the news that's making the rounds with St. Louis City SC here in just a moment. Last night sucked. There's no way around that, man. That was a super entertaining game if you're a Cardinals fan for like 8.5 innings. And then you got to the bottom of the ninth and everything turned. Ryan Helsley, his velocity was there. I thought his stuff, generally speaking, looked pretty good. His slider looked like it was crisp. He didn't have command of it, and it hit the heart of the plate a little bit more than what he would have wanted. And the result was, for the first time this season, the Cardinals took a lead into the ninth inning and lost with Ryan Helsley on the mound. That has not happened a single time so far this year until last night. T-Bone, what'd you make of that loss last night? What kind of an effect did it have on your general mood, general feelings about the Cardinals?
It didn't impact my mood about them as a whole, just because I think they're kind of where they belong in the standings, around like that 3-4 games above 500. They're a fine team. They're not a great team. I'm not worried about Helsley. I think that was just a blip on the radar. You know, his fastball's been getting hit pretty well this season, but his breaking stuff's been awesome. And he hung a couple of those last night, ends up costing him. I agree with your sentiment when we talked about it at the beginning of the show today. There were more positives out of that game than just the Ryan Helsley blow-up that, sure, it kind of overshadows it because you lost that game, but you saw Sonny Gray really right the ship and give you 7 strong innings. Jojo Romero, 2 strikeouts out of the bullpen, and Paul Goldschmidt with a home run, and not just a home run, but a home run against a left-handed starter, one of the best left-handed starters in the National League. I think you saw a lot of positive trends for the Cardinals from last night's game that you really hope continue to carry over here in the home stretch of this season.
Yeah, I thought last night with Goldie and Sonny, those were the 2 most positive things that you needed to see. Sonny Gray with the 7 innings, Goldie with the home run, starting to see a little bit more power from him lately, basically since July 8th. So talking about 3 weeks now. He's been a completely different hitter. He's hitting for average and power, something that we haven't seen from him for this length of a stretch at any point during the season. He hit a ball really hard, nearly a home run. It ended up going foul earlier today in this game, just in the second inning. A scoreless tie so far against the Cubs. That's kind of how I viewed it. There were more positives than negatives last night. Unfortunately, the one negative that there was ended up coming back to cost you, and it cost you a win. On the St. Louis City SC side of things, there has been some more reporting. It looks like I ended up being right on this. According to the report from Tom Bogert, the contract negotiations between Parker and St. Louis City SC, Tim Parker, were not going, quote, smoothly, end quote.
Oh.
And that was part of why he ended up getting traded. Makes a lot of sense, man. He's on an expiring deal. If he decided, hey, this is maybe somewhere that I'm not necessarily going to be long-term because I don't see a way for me to win here, or if they weren't offering him the money that he felt like he was worth, it makes sense. Trade him for a younger center back, 26 years old, see if there's anything there that you can extract talent-wise out of him, and decide to go your ways. But Tim Parker's going to be remembered fondly here, man. The first goal in franchise history will always be something that is next to his name, and he'll be remembered for that and for having one of the best expansion seasons for a team in the history of MLS.
Yeah, when you think back to that expansion team, when we look, 5-10 years from now on that team, he's going to be one of the first names that come up because he was part of the main core. When you think of the main core, starting from goalie upwards towards the forward group, you think Berkey, you think Parker, you think Leuven, and you think Klaus.
Yep.
And he's going to always be remembered for that. And like you said, the historic goal in the first game here with St. Louis City SC. But hey, from the city's perspective, makes sense. The contract negotiations, they're not going well, according to reports. Move on from him, try and get younger. And I think they realized that, you know what, this core probably had its swan song last year, and it wasn't able to get the job done. Now it's time to start moving on from some of those guys.
There is something worth noting in the NFL. Final thing here as we get ready to get out of here for the weekend. No sign of Brandon Ayuk at today's practice for the San Francisco 49ers. There were some cryptic tweets yesterday, one from Colin Cowherd, who said expects to see some news on Brandon Ayuk in the foreseeable future. Man, I disagree with the notion that he has leverage in these negotiations. I just don't believe it. If I'm the 49ers, I'm looking him in the eye and I'm saying, hey, you want to keep holding out? $50,000 a day. Every day you miss, this is mandatory for us to fine you. It's $50,000 every single day that you are not participating in our camp. And until you decide to participate, you're going to be losing all of that money. I would just call his bluff. I don't think he's missing games this year. I don't believe it. Looks like maybe he's either going to be on the move or there's some blinking going on. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but that's certainly a story that we'll be reacting to on Monday. Tanner will have that for you on Monday from 11 to 2. They got a producer party, I believe, on Monday. From 11 to 2 o'clock is the way that that's going to go. I will be on the morning show. If you guys want to hang out with me today, 4 to 6 o'clock is the time to do so. Federated Auto Parts Raceway at I-55. The Ironman 55 is later. It's this weekend. Starts out tonight down in Peevely, Missouri. If you want full information on this, the Ironman 55, check out the details at 101ESPN.com. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. Fingers crossed that the Cardinals have a good weekend up in Chicago. We'll talk to you then. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.